Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Dr. Mitchell by Raylin Marks, narrated by Sarah Puckett and Aidan Snow. Chapter 1. Ash. I'd zoned out so hard on my term paper that I hardly heard the barista calling out my name. I popped up from my seat and weaved through the crowd of people that had swarmed the coffee shop. "Any position?" the barista announced again. I was feeling pretty amused with myself for my fake name choice, until all of the city showed up and heard it. "Matcha frappuccino," she said, as I stepped up to get my drink. "Right here," I said, cheeks hot with the attention my lame-ass idea caused. "Cute," she said with a wink. "Ha!" was all I could manage. I turned to get the hell out of the mob, and the next thing I knew, my stupid alias was no longer the attention grabber. "Shit," I said as my frappuccino crashed directly into the center of a white button-down shirt. "Fuck," the guy growled, his arms out and eyes roaming over the green stain, slowly oozing in a frozen blob down his shirt. "Damn it. I am so sorry," I said, not knowing the first way to redeem myself for spinning around too fast to pay attention to the couple standing behind me. His eyes met mine after I made some super effort to throw the offensive drink in the trash and grab napkins. I instinctively threw a pile on the ground and took the other handful to wipe what was left on his shirt. His hand covered mine, and his blue eyes sparkled as the sun would over a tropical sea. Holy fuck, I thought, trying to keep at bay the rapidly approaching third embarrassing thing that could happen in 5 seconds. This guy was the sexiest man I'd ever laid eyes on, Hollywood hunks included. "I've got it," he said, his lips turning up into an irresistible grin. "Good God," a female's voice screeched with annoyance. "Go!" She waved me off, reminding me I'd caused enough damage already. I eyed her. "Let me at least do something," I said, her green eyes narrowing while her mauve lips pursed in annoyance. She folded her arms. "Do something?" she questioned me with an arch of her perfectly shaped eyebrow. "Maybe you would like to lick your silly drink off his chest." "Go order her another one," the guy I'd assaulted with my drink said in a half-humored, half-demanding tone to the woman. "You don't have to boss your girl around over my dumbass mistake." "She's not my girl," he said, glaring at the woman before he leveled me with a darker stare. "What's the choice of beverage that I have the luxury of adding to my wardrobe colors today?" "What the fuck?" "What's the drink?" the bitch seethed. Who the hell were these two? The power suit couple? They were dressed and looked the part of two wealthy people who came to San Francisco to take over the place. "Matcha frap," I said, trying to let this shit show move forward so we could stop the back and forth, and I could hide behind my computer, waiting for them to call my real name this time. "Name?" she asked, folding her arms and rightfully annoyed. Right, it's any position," the man said in the same demanding tone he'd used for his gal pal. "Isn't that what they called before you painted my suit green?" "Annie." I smiled, cheeks flushed, knowing my face was beet red. "Nice name," he answered, blotting the stained shirt. "Are you naturally nice to strangers who ruin your wardrobe and an asshole to your friends?" I asked, thumb pointing to where the blonde with mauve lips stood in line with eyes of fire directed toward me. "I'm feeling rather compassionate for someone who appears to be having a rough day." I felt my breath hitch, and my heart reacted to his turquoise blue eyes. "Nice of you to assume that." I half smiled. "And the reason your friend is stuck with my problem?" "Long story," he smiled. "She'll get over it, trust me." Wow. Well, I am sorry about this. I sighed. "I'll just go wait over there." I pointed toward my laptop. "I have 5 minutes at most to turn in my essay now." All the more reason that my friend," his eyes shifted toward the woman and back to me, "is ordering for you." "Yeah," I said. "Thanks again." The guy was too gorgeous for words, and there was no way in hell I was looking back at him or up from my computer to catch another angle of the black-haired god who'd given a facelift of beauty to the coffee shop when he walked through the door. I hit send on my essay with 1 minute to spare and waited to hear the swoosh sound on my email before I could collapse back into the booth seat and let my nerves crash after everything that had happened. By the time I gathered myself, my dumbass attempt to be funny name was called again, and the couple was nowhere in sight. Thank God. The coffee shop was still busy, but I was on my way out anyway. I needed to get back to my hotel room and wind down. I was supposed to go out with some old high school friends who lived in the area tonight, and at this point, I could use a drink. Or 10. Or 20. Or not. Tomorrow was my cousin's wedding day, and I probably shouldn't be hungover while having to sit through the superficial ceremony I'd been forced to attend on mine and Dad's behalf. Dad owed me for this. Big time. I pulled up the back strap of my heels on my left foot, hobbling on the right foot in the new stilettos I knew I'd hate by the end of this weekend. I'd bought them to match the burgundy dress I was to wear to the wedding, and I'd decided to break them in tonight. Something told me comfort wasn't part of the expensive shoes that I shouldn't have let the sales associate talk me into purchasing. One last glance at my strapless bandage dress, and I was good to go. I tried pulling my natural waves up, but it wasn't working. Screw it. It's not like I'm out to meet guys tonight. I laughed at the idea. Let's get part 1 of my trip to Frisco out of the way. Hanging at a rooftop club with friends I hadn't seen since high school. The Uber dropped me off at a super fancy hotel that was well lit and immediately oozed wealth and power out of the front doors. Flags from across the world hung over the entrance, while the luxury cars that lined up made my compact Uber selection appear to be dropping me off at the wrong place. "What the hell?" I whispered. "You might meet a famous person," the Uber driver informed me. "Good Lord," I answered as I exited the car. I waved my way through the cars and people entering at the same time as me. I was surrounded by luxury and needed to find my friends fast. "Ashley Taylor," I said to the concierge as Beth had instructed me to do when I got here. "Miss Taylor," he shifted through papers. "Will you be staying with us tonight?" "I'm here to meet friends at a rooftop lounge," I said softly. He reached for a pen to scroll along a screen installed in front of him. "I see," he answered. "Richard," he waved someone over to him. "Please escort Miss Taylor to her party on the top." By the time the doors admitted me through secret elevators and I'd arrived at the rooftop bar, I was somewhat grateful I had on expensive heels at the very least. The atmosphere was euphoric, but it was definitely for the wealthier patrons. I followed Richard to the outdoor area where I heard my name called and finally let out the breath I seemed to have held since following Richard to the elevator. "Hey," I said, eyeing the 3 friends I hadn't seen since graduation night. "Ashley Taylor," Gabby laughed and hugged me. "You look awesome." "Thanks. You all look great too." I smiled at my girlfriends and the men with them. "It's been too long." 6 years, Beth said. "Here, let's get the introductions out of the way." She pointed to the tall, prematurely balding man next to her. "This is my husband, Max." She smiled with pride before looking on. "Go, Gab." Gabby threw her blonde ponytail back. "This is John." She smiled at the blonde man who was standing stiffly and uncomfortably at her side. "He and I hooked up about a month ago." She ran her hand down his polo shirt. "He's not into the night scenes." She giggled. "I'm with you on that." I tried to smile to help the poor guy loosen up some. "I think I'm going to need a drink to process this venue." "That's on me," Liz said. It's been so damn long, babe. She hugged me and kissed both of my cheeks. What the hell happened to shy, sweet, valedictorian Liz? That's quite a greeting, I laughed as I ordered a cosmopolitan. Where's your guy? I teased. The girls laughed while Max and John fell into a conversation, leaving the girls to chat while they returned to their drinks. Divorced, she shrugged. Being a doctor sucks. Well, obviously it's good money. I waved my hand around the stunning lights of the city and the vast view of luxury from the rooftop. Well, it is. She sipped her martini. But, truth be told, I'm still paying off student loans and probably will be until I die. I sipped the drink that was placed in front of me at the high table where we stood. Why in the hell would you reserve a place like this if you're paying off debt? It was one of the perks of the medical conference I had to attend today, she said with a strange grin. Then her face straightened. I heard about your mom. I'm so sorry. These were not the same girls I remembered from high school. Maybe this is why I've heard so many stories about 10-year reunions sucking. Everyone is different, but trying not to be. My friends from school were giggly, awkward, and, well, not what I expected. Maybe I was the weird one. Yes, I answered her, gulping down half of my Cosmo. We thought her remission would last a lot longer than it did, but we lost her 2 years ago. Dang, Beth said uncomfortably. Is your dad okay? Are you okay? You don't have a man with you, so are you single? Why are you up in Frisco? Okay, I started drinking too late. I smiled. Cousin's wedding. Dad made me show up here on his behalf. They helped us out financially while Mom was sick, and the bills were burying my parents. I have no idea who these people are, but I guess the wedding is a big ordeal, and they insisted we come. Ugh, annoying. Gabby sighed and reached out to me. Not what they did, but having to be around people you don't know like that, right? Nothing compared to what I'm experiencing at the moment. Either they had started drinking too early, or I was standing around 3 strangers who I probably would have never been friends with if I didn't grow up with them. It's fine. I motioned for another drink, noticing I'd absently gulped down the first. Well, what have you been up to? Liz asked. I'm ready to fuck our keynote speaker from the conference today, she said, my eyes widening at her abrupt words. Well, I had to drop out of City College and put it all on hold, I answered. I needed to take care of my mom, and ever since she died, I've been sort of getting by while deciding my next move. Girl, you have to do you, Gabby stated, pointing at me. I am. I sipped my drink. I'd apparently lost the interest of my friends after informing them about my boring life plans. The conversation shifted, not to what we'd all really been up to, but to orgasms, broken relationships, and any male specimen who passed our table, as if Max and whatever the other guy's name was weren't there with us. Thank God for the shift in our environment. The music grew louder and changed as the sun started to set, and now my obviously drunk friends were flinging themselves onto the dance floor. Stuck with their significant others, I bowed out as nicely as I could, but I wasn't leaving these views just yet. I walked away from the crowd and found a slice of heaven on the rooftop that gave me the most stunning view. I stared at the millions of twinkling lights that illuminated the city and tried to burn this image into my mind. I'd seen cityscapes painted and photographed, but feeling it while experiencing the sight itself was something I'd never captured, no matter how many canvases I'd painted. I had to find a way to breathe life into a painting that would help people sense what I was sensing by looking at this magic. So, a smooth voice said to my right, I feel we might have met before. I looked over, and my drink sloshed in my hand when my left ankle weakened, and I almost fell off to the side after seeing the dream guy I spilled my drink on at the coffee shop earlier. "Yeah," I said as he caught my fall by reaching for my arm. He glanced down at the Cosmopolitan I held. "I can safely say that if you spilled that particular drink on me, that I'm not one who looks good in pink." I smirked. You would look good in anything. Or nothing." "No?" His eyes roamed over my face. "Yes," I answered, stunned and too buzzed to hold a conversation with Mr. Gorgeous. His lips twisted. "What brings you here tonight?" I looked at him in confusion. "Friends, and you?" "Work." He smiled. "Did you handle your assignment from earlier?" Why the hell is this guy even talking to me? "I did. Thanks for asking and actually remembering." "How could I forget? The moment I saw you tonight, all I could think was that this is the girl known as Any Position." "You're here on business, Mr. I narrowed my eyes at him. His turquoise ones glistened. "I am." "And I'm guessing you're most likely here with me, bringing up that stupid name, because you're looking to have a little fun on your trip?" "Perhaps." My body went into electric spasms at the thought. His fucking hot looks. And that I would even suggest this to him. Hell no. I wasn't going to be some homewrecker because I came out to meet friends, which was a total fail, at a damn bar. I wasn't that drunk. Or maybe I was. The hell if I knew. "Yeah," I smiled. "Sorry, I can't help with that." "A shame." His voice was low, and I was starting to become hypnotically charmed by this man. "I was looking for the only person not drunk to enjoy this amazing view with." I smiled at him to hold my exterior confidence. Good Lord, he was gorgeous. The dark shadow on his jaw worked to carve out the faultlessness of his chiseled face. His coal black hair, a tousled mess of perfection, set off his eyes that seemed to bore straight into my soul as he stared into mine. I glanced at the man who was leaning against the ledge, body twisted to face me, gave me all I needed to know about how I sort of wished he was asking me to spend the night with him. His dark-ribbed sweater hugged his chest and muscular arms, waking up all the dormant female parts of my body. "Yes," I sighed, gathering my thoughts and wishing I had some water to hydrate and shake this alcohol out of my head. "The views are stunning," he said, bringing his attention out to the city. "May I ask why you're over here and not enjoying the company of the women I saw you with earlier?" "Spying on me, eh?" I teased. He licked his lips, and then they parted into a sexy smile that revealed perfect white teeth. "If you call taking notice of a beautiful woman in this toxic atmosphere of after-hours fun spying, then I guess I'm a spy." "Toxic atmosphere?" I laughed. "Who the hell are you anyway?" He sipped what I assumed was his glass of scotch. "A man who positively does not want to be here this weekend." He glanced around the ritzy rooftop. "And not even the slightest bit tempted to appreciate the bullshit conference I was forced to attend today, even with the perks that come with it." I leaned up against the ledge, letting the crisp air continue to clear my thoughts with my mystery dream guy. "I guess that means you had to go to the medical conference, or whatever in the hell my friend Liz called it, too? Too bad you're not a chick, because all I've heard about tonight was how the keynote speaker made a week's worth of conferences manageable." He chuckled. "Is that so? I found the jackass to be dull and ridiculously boring." "So you're a doctor then, eh?" He eyed me, his brows pulling in as those damn snake-charming eyes roamed over my face. "I'm reconsidering my love for that particular profession after today." "What the hell?" "I'm fucking with you." He laughed and motioned for a waiter. "Can we get—" He looked at me. "What are you having?" "It's on the medical group that's hosting this shindig." "Water," I stated. "Shindig?" Water? The corners of his eyes crinkled in humor. Trust me, the group that puts this ordeal on can afford it. I'm not being modest. I smiled at the waiter. I'll have water, please. Water for the lovely lady, and I'll have another scotch. The waiter bowed out and left Mr. Gorgeous and me back to whatever in the hell we were talking about. So, am I going to get a name other than Annie? Why don't we just keep it at Annie? I said with a smile. Let's face it, we're complete strangers, and I don't think this is going any further than us both complaining about being up here. All right, no names then, he said, studying me. But what if it went further than us complaining about this pretentious party that we're at? Okay, he's not here for the chit-chat. Why the hell would I think he was? He was gorgeous and an asshole doctor who was most likely doing what my friends were doing, sizing up the place for someone to screw. I was clear-headed enough now to know this was all superficial on my part, too. Wanting a piece of this guy because of his looks alone. Yeah, going to have to pass on that. I smiled and gulped my water. And she shatters my self-esteem. He mockingly covered his heart. I'm sure you can get plenty of girls up here who would take you up on that offer. I'm not interested in any of the women up here. As I mentioned, I am merely out here and have spied on you earlier tonight because you are the most attractive woman in the club. While I appreciate the compliment, I patted his arm. Shit, bad idea. This guy worked out at least 3 times a day. I have to get my ass out of here. He laughed instead. Let me call for your ride. I have an Uber, I said, pulling out my phone and using the app to seal the deal and get me out of here before I did make a real fuck up with this guy, other than spilling a drink on him earlier. Then I guess you are leaving me to the wolves. His lips frowned in some irresistibly handsome way. I hadn't been laid in over a year, so one night with a stranger, no strings attached, surely that wouldn't send me straight to hell, right? He leaned in, and his fingers traced on my arms. It's been nice seeing you. I only wish it could have been more than small talk. His lips grazed my ear as he whispered, and I couldn't respond. I was paralyzed by the smell of his cologne, his warm breath caressing my neck, and the devilish grin he gave me before the man left me standing on the balcony, cursing myself for always playing it safe and being too damn proper all of the time. I wanted to chase him down and tell him I was down for whatever he was looking for. We were both strangers from out of town. We would never see each other again. And, well, a few more drinks, and I wouldn't give 2 shits about whatever the man wanted to do. I never was one to be approached by guys. Never. Yet here I was, literally at the top of the city with the most handsome man I'd ever seen in my life. And I just fucking turned him down? I went to follow my dark side and find where he disappeared into the crowds. But then the text from my dad came through. Dad. Hey, kiddo, you never called. I hope everything is well and you had a good visit with your friends today. Don't go too wild. I smiled at my dad's message, pulling me back into a reasonable mindset. Here I was, about to go fuck some guy because he was hot, and because my meetup with friends was an epic fail. I had no idea where the hell the girls or their men were at this point, and I had to go to this stupid wedding tomorrow. This reunion was a complete waste of time, and I almost threw the entire reason I was up here to the wind, all because some hot guy wanted to be more than friends tonight. Ash. Yep, heading back to my room now. I'll text you tomorrow after the wedding. See you on Sunday night. Dad. Love you, kid. Chapter 2. Ash. After a restless night of analyzing the conversation with Mr. Gorgeous, I woke up in a more rational mindset. San Francisco brought out a side of me I never knew existed, a daring side that actually believed I missed out on a one-night stand with some random hot guy. It was never even close to that. I was thinking clearly now, and still slightly annoyed I was headed to a wedding with strangers as a thank you for my dad, who wasn't feeling well enough to make the trip. So many things associated with this trip were going through my mind. Number one, Dad was going back to his doctor when I got home. Being this tired all of the time couldn't be a good sign for the 65-year-old heartbreaker. And sneaking a fast food breakfast with his classic car buddies every chance he got lately could be another issue affecting his health. He wasn't a healthy eater, no matter how hard I tried. And my so-called friends bringing up Mom losing her battle with cancer had me thinking about the fact that I wasn't going to lose my dad, too. The fact that I was here without him was a good enough reason for me to force him to see a doctor for an overdue checkup. The stubborn man owed me, and now I knew how to make him pay up. Number two, I thought it was funny how I met up with friends and ended up leaving early after not being able to find them. And after checking my phone this morning, there was still no word from any of them. Ping. I looked at my phone that displayed Liz's name as if I'd summoned the text. 1,000,000 hours later, I said, putting down my mascara and opening the message. Liz. Hey, I couldn't find you last night. I'm so sorry we ditched you. I was so wasted and woke up in bed with a stranger. Did you see who I was with? Please, God, tell me what the fuck I did last night. I looked at the phone and covered my smile. Maybe I had been out of the real world for too long. Now I go out of town for a random wedding, and it is turning into the Twilight Zone. Ash. Hey, no, I couldn't find you guys after you hit the dance floor. Are you okay? Liz. I need to get tested. Fuck. I was so messed up last night. I ran my fingernail over my bottom teeth. How the hell was I supposed to respond to this? I felt horrible for her, but if I was honest, my brain was all twisted up after meeting the same attractive guy twice in a day, and then him hinting at me to get my ass into the same position as Liz. I wasn't going to dare judge her. Ash, you'll be fine. Get tested, though. Did the other Steve go off with him? Do you think someone put something in your drink? Liz, no, this was all on me. Everyone said that I was so shit-faced that I just grabbed some guy off the dance floor and told everyone I was going to fuck him. I feel like such an idiot. He's in the shower. I think I'm going to get out of here. What the fuck am I supposed to say? They took off on the dance floor, and after my small talk with Mr. Gorgeous, Mr. G, I couldn't find them to say I was leaving. What a fucking weird night. And now this. Ash, sorry. I couldn't find you guys, so I just took off. I have the wedding to go to today. Keep me updated if you can. Liz, sorry for ditching out on you. It was nice catching up. I'll get through this. Take it easy, Ashley. Ash, you too. Thanks for the invite out. I hope everything works itself out. Liz, well, it's not the first time I slept with a random guy. It just sucks waking up hungover and not knowing how it all went down. See ya. I didn't have time for this. I was fake texting a friend about her shitty morning hangover and guilt from screwing a guy she couldn't remember. This wasn't my game. I was trying to put that entire weird day behind me and move into this one. I was determined to show up at this wedding and do my best to show my distant cousins, the Johnsons, the appreciation my dad and I had for their help when my mom was sick. I had no idea of the relationship my parents had with these people. Still, I was going to put my best foot forward and enjoy them celebrating the marriage of a cousin I used to play Barbie with when I was 3. I left my phone in the vanity area on the charger, music still playing, and danced my way over to my closet. I pulled out the short slip dress I got for the wedding. It was more costly than the heels, but after slipping it on, I felt refreshed and beautiful. I ran my hand over my stomach, thankful I wasn't bloated, and the dress hugged my frame perfectly. The burgundy color held a soft shimmer under the light of my hotel room and made my skin look like I'd just laid out and enjoyed the sun's rays. Nice one, Clay. I internally thanked my best guy friend who had fashioned down to a science. He and his boyfriend Joe were the best guys I knew. Joe wouldn't let me head up to San Francisco unless I received his favorable touch to my hair. Thank God for that, too. The soft red highlights and layers he added to my chestnut hair were perfect. I covered my chest when my Uber pulled up to the same hotel I was just at the previous night. What the fuck? I laughed at the fact that I was probably going to be on that rooftop again for the reception. It made sense, though. This was the hot spot for the wealthy people, and the Johnsons were definitely that. After tipping the driver, I stepped out. I instinctively covered the deep V in the front of the dress after seeing a few guys taking notice of my cleavage. I walked through the hotel entrance and followed the crowd through the vast and luxurious hotel lobby. The intoxicating fragrances of lilies alerted me to the massively decorated and immaculately designed wedding ballroom. God dang! This had the touch of an artist to create an atmosphere of love and make a single fool like myself wish I were on the arm of my one true love to enjoy such splendor. I loved every ounce of this decor. It was more than decor, it was art. It was all fashioned with candles, flowers arched along the walls, along with some diamond-like vases holding greenery that glistened under lights placed above them. It was flawless, and a smile spread across my face. I was feeling the serenity of true love wrapping itself around me. Third time's a charm. A familiar voice snapped me out of my daze as I stood at the entrance, waiting to be ushered to my seat. Holy fuck. Am I still asleep and dreaming this man into being at the wedding with me? I looked at Mr. Gorgeous, sucked in a breath, and placed my hand on his arm when he reached out to me. He had been transformed into a model from a wedding magazine. The silver vest under his black tuxedo and his smile completed the atmosphere of intoxicating love this place was exuding. He leaned into me. You don't have to say anything. I was quite speechless after noticing you in the doorway. You look... He paused, and the sexiest smile lit his ocean blue eyes. Yeah, I swallowed hard. What are the odds we meet here? I laughed. Perhaps it's fate, he said, standing tall and resuming his walk down the aisle where the ushers were seating guests. Maybe you and I will find out later. I smiled at him, lost in his beautiful face, but resuming my walk, or he'd be pulling me from falling on my face in these heels. I'm with the bride's guests, I informed him when he led me to a seat to the right. That's all fine and good, he answered. However, I will have the best view of you during the wedding if you are seated with the groom's guest. Nice one, I flirted back. It had to be the wedding flowers making me drunk on happiness. I'm with the bride. I disagree, he said with a smile. You're officially with me, and now that makes you a part of the groom's family. Who the hell are you? I whispered with a laugh. He glanced around with that same devilish grin he left me with last night. The man you're desperately grateful you ran into again. Now, Miss Annie, he arched a knowing brow at me. You are causing a scene, and this is the bride's day. I'll kindly ask you again to please be seated in this row, 4 chairs in. I felt some bizarre sense of familiarity with this handsome guy. His sexy, smooth voice and those eyes that spoke to my soul somehow. What in the hell did I do to capture his attention? How in the world am I meeting him randomly for the 3rd time? Good God, stuff like this never happened. And it sure as heck didn't happen to me. Fine, I said, my heart hammering in my chest, now caught in his seductive gaze. You can explain your screw-up to the bride later, I said, trying to hold my own against him. She'll never know. He winked as I walked to the seat that he'd ushered me to. I look forward to seeing you at the reception, he said, and then turned to resume his wedding duties along with the men dressed in matching $1 million wedding tuxedos. How wealthy was this family? I spotted Mr. Johnson. That's all I knew him as, Mr. Johnson, the father of the bride. Was I on some kind of strange high from seeing Mr. G again? Yes, absolutely. And I couldn't wait for this to be over to meet him on the dance floor. I was drawn to the guy. It could just be the fact that it was his superficial fucking hot looks and the fact that he brought my female parts back to life. But I also had my own duties to attend to with this wedding. I had to somehow weasel my way through all of these fashionable people to find Mr. Johnson and sincerely hope he gave half a damn I was even here. I glanced around at the romantic atmosphere. Clay and Joe would have died just seeing this place. This was beyond even my artistic mind's dream. I took notice of the ballroom, filling fast with guests as they quickly took their seats. I leaned over and tried my best to conceal my phone to text Clay. Ash, this place looks like I'm at some royal ceremony. I love you for helping me with my outfit. Clay, I told you. Now own it like the gorgeous babe you are. XOXO. We want pics and details when you get home, girl. I could feel Clay smile through his message. I owed him and Joe dinner for this. If it were up to me, I would have been hiding in a corner wearing some cotton casual dress. But my guys weren't having any of that once they learned I was coming to the Fairmont for the wedding. The music changed, and I relaxed confidently into my seat and prepared to watch the ceremony begin. The groom and his groomsmen were the first to enter from a front side door and stand on a stage of flowers and sparkles. There he was, outshining everyone on stage, the man without a name, who seemed to fall out of a dream and play into the real-life situation I was forced to go through alone. He stood taller than the rest, and his eyes went directly to mine. What the hell did he think about all of this? I was still stuck on how I grabbed his attention after doing the most annoying thing that could happen to anyone, spilling an ice-cold drink on him. His eyes left mine, and an odd expression fell over his face when he looked to the back of the room. Then a challenging smile fell on his lips, prompting me to turn back and see the bitchy chick who was with him at the coffee shop. The one he said owed him. Her blonde hair was pulled up elaborately in a fashionable bun, and her eyes were on Mr. G. Her cheeks flushed red, her green eyes sparkling along with her silver gown. She seemed as captivated by him as I was. Who wouldn't be? Who'd ever heard of a groomsman stealing the beauty from the bride? I glanced around and smiled at the realization that all the young women my age had eyes continually drifting to the Greek god who was standing, sharply dressed in a tuxedo. I sucked in a breath of excited nerves while the bridal march started, and we all stood to turn to acknowledge the bride. Damn it, I was always too short, and I wasn't going to catch a hint of my cousin walking down the aisle. I turned to look over my shoulder, obviously more interested in my dream guy. My breath caught when I noticed his smile and eyes on me, not the back of the room where my cousin was heading down the aisle. He bit back a smile, my heart trying to jump out of my chest and up to where he stood, regally and sexy as hell. I was some crazed fool who was captivated by this mystery man, and now I needed to stop gawking at him. I was going to figure out who he was exactly, and I was going to follow through with whatever happened. Third time meeting him? It was definitely a charm. Chapter 3. Ash. The wedding ceremony was sweet, in an old-fashioned way, all the way down to the scripted vows. Regardless of vows and songs played and prayers said over the couple, the ceremony was beautiful, and love was in the air. I slid into the crowd of people being guided by the organizers to another area of the Grand Hotel for the reception. My trepidation of going to the wedding reception alone was replaced with the excitement of engaging with Mr. G again. I had to remain focused on priority one, though. No matter how many times my focus shifted from the beautiful bride and her groom toward the sexy man who stood with the groomsmen, I kept my mind keenly aware of why I was here. The rest could sort itself out later. The reception hall was not the rooftop experience from the night before. It was a more elegant atmosphere, of course, with silver and black decor enhanced by the lavish florals and greenery, arranged with floating iridescent lighting, spotlighting everything to add a taste of romance. I followed the attendant, who was speaking to someone in his earpiece, to one of the many tables blanketed with a shimmering silver cloth and arranged candles in a unique rectangular glass. Table 21 was written in beautiful calligraphy against a foiled paper. The flowers in crystal vases smelled delicious, and after a cursory glance, it was easy to see that each arrangement probably cost over $100. My lips twisted to see if I'd be the only one at what now seemed to be the leftover guest table, and I felt a twinge of nervousness wash over me. No, I would not let myself be guided by the insecure Ashley Taylor, who previously did everything she could to get out of coming here. That Ashley would have me rudely running up to the Johnsons, tripping over words to thank them for what they did for my family, thoroughly embarrassing myself because I genuinely did not know these people from Adam. I was 3 the last time I saw any of them, and I had a shitty memory to start with. Why would they think I could remember a cousin from 25 years ago? I was seated here. A young man's voice snapped me out of my daze as I absently sipped the glass of wine poured for me once I was settled at the table. I hope I'm not taking anyone's place. I smiled over at a younger man, gorgeous hazel eyes to match his smoothed back blonde hair. He had to have just passed legal drinking age, and his smile was quite contagious too. Might be a good conversation buddy, I thought, swallowing my wine. Not that I'm aware of, I smiled back at him. I get so jealous. A young woman's voice sounded humored, but honest, when she and 4 other young women sat with her at this wedding guest reject table. Calm down, Beck, a stunning redhead said, sitting properly at our table. Her eyes slid around the table, falling on me and the guy who'd sat before the girl pack showed up in their super revealing high-dollar gowns. Hey there, she said, eyes meeting mine. Hi, I lifted my chin with a smile. I'm Ashley. I used my thumb to point to the guy sitting to my right. I don't think you mentioned your name. I'm Dave, he said, seemingly enamored to be the only guy at a table of beautiful women. I guess I'm the luckiest man in the room, he chuckled. You might second-guess that after being with us single and very desperate ladies by the time they opened the dance floor, a beautiful woman said. She had chestnut eyes and a chocolate skin tone I would give my right arm for. Yeah, he sipped his wine. It didn't take long for their conversation to blow up in gossip. The girls started in with snarky remarks about my cousin's ceremony, from the decor to this beautiful reception. I was appalled, uncomfortable, and at a loss for words. How anyone could go out of their way to be so nasty was beyond me. By the time we finished the 5-star meal, I was ready to get out of here, Mr. G or not. So what? We'd met randomly 3 times now. There was no relationship. It was surface fun. And I wasn't tempted in the slightest to stick around any longer than to find the family who'd helped mine, giving them my best wishes and leave. Strange how such a beautiful environment could become toxic with jealous women who had nothing better to do than degrade a bride on her special day to make themselves feel better about being single. I went to stand up and head toward the Johnsons, who were seated in front, but the lights flickered, and instantly the room was transformed. It was now dark, spotlights pointing toward the empty space on the dance floor. The bride was seated in a chair on the stage, and the music changed to some hip tune. A spotlight blinded me when it turned to beam at the back doors that opened into the vast room. Blinking a few times to get the stars out of my eyes, I noticed the groom leading a choreographed dance, his groomsmen following in step behind him. The men had tossed their jackets to the side to reveal white shirts and suspenders. I covered my mouth when I saw Mr. G had some sexy dance moves among the others. His smile was devious as his body moved in step to entertain the bride. This guy was ripped to perfection. His muscles were pressing against his button-down shirt, and unlike the others, his sleeves were rolled up, exposing his chiseled forearms. I pulled out my phone to video the dance that the guys must have worked on for weeks to make this impressive presentation for the bride. I was pretty sure the superficial haters at my table would have something shitty to say about it, but I loved it. It was romantic, corny and cute, all in one. I'd seen stuff like this on social media, but to see it in person was quite another thing. I turned my focus from Mr. G to my cousin, who cheered as the men danced around her. She was a beautiful bride. A very pregnant, beautiful bride, I might add. The white dress was cut perfectly to show the flattering swell of her belly. I could only dream of looking so radiant when I was pregnant. Her long black curls bounced, and the diamonds placed the pinned-up part of her veil twinkled as the spotlight followed the groom and his men up to her. The hate talk resumed once the show was over, but thank God the wedding planner had moved the reception forward quickly. The next thing we knew, the cake was being cut. Then my worst fear came into play. The traditional bouquet toss. I was lined up with countless young women and took residence next to a fun gray-haired lady with bright red lips. "You going to catch it for me, kid?" she asked in a salty voice. I smirked at her. I tend to repel these sort of things. "Watch those bridesmaids. I hear they're vicious." She nudged me. Without warning, and not even looking, the bouquet miraculously landed in my hands. 3 women tried to rip it out of my grips before they were practically cuffed and dragged out by the wedding planner and her minions. "Jesus," I said, running my fingers over the nail tracks on my arms from the claws of desperate women trying to take the flowers. I turned to the elderly woman. "Here," I smiled at her. "Caught it for you." I tried to bow out, but she stopped me with a solemn gaze. "It's yours." She arched an eyebrow at me. "You have the battle scars, honey." A loud group of men's voices erupted from behind me, but I walked briskly back to my table where the gossip girls eyed the bouquet as if I'd ripped the jewels from the bride. "You guys want this flower arrangement that badly?" I asked, pushing it toward them. A blonde with glossy lips reached over and snatched it up. "Thanks," she said, as I frowned at her immature yet snobbish behavior. "Here he comes. Here he comes. Act fucking normal, Melly," the redhead said. "Where the fuck is Mr. Johnson? I can't do this wannabe Housewives of San Fran another second." "I believe I'm confused." Mr. G's velvet voice sliced through my irritated thoughts, bringing my attention to his approach. "Why?" the girls all nearly said in unison, faces flushed under his stare. He looked at the blonde who stood with the bouquet in her hands. "I was never so thrilled to catch the garter so I could be in a photo with my future wife." She exhaled confidently, walking over to his sexy smirk. "I guess that's what it means, right?" He grinned. "That's exactly what it means. Allow me." He pulled the bouquet from her hands. "This doesn't particularly belong to you, whether it was handed down or not." Oh, great. After being at the table with these girls since the beginning of the reception, I had a feeling they were capable of putting a hit on me if this guy did what I had a pretty good feeling he was about to do. "Annie," he arched a brow at me and held out the bouquet. "You and I are needed for pictures together." "I'm good." I tightened my lips, feeling gazes of fire on me, and wanted no part of any of this. "I disagree." He pinned me with a stare that had me locked into a trance. "You can give it to one of these ladies after, but for now, you and I are the ones who are under the wedding folklore of the next ones to get hitched. I can't think of another stunning woman in the room I'd rather be in this situation with." "Go," Dave said. "Sheesh, you're pissing off the entire table." I looked at him with a stare of disbelief as I stood. "Sorry. Let's go take our pictures," I said, linking my arm in the guy's arm. "How in the hell did you get seated with the bride's oldest enemies?" he asked while pulling me away from the group. "My future husband," I played along, seeing him smile. "He's part of the wedding party and didn't ensure I was seated with the groom's guests." "What an ass," Mr. G answered. "Yeah, he apparently thought the whole thing would be funny after I wouldn't go to bed with him last night." That one got Mr. G. He nearly missed a step, but recovered smoothly and quickly. Well, perhaps you should have slept with him then. We're saving ourselves for our wedding night. I met the arch of his brow with one of my own. Is that so? He asked, taking my hand and placing the flowers in it. If that's the case, maybe you'll make one small exception for him. You know he did have to dress in this penguin suit and all. Our eyes were locked on each other in this unscripted banter, while the photographer took our photograph. He's the one who accepted the job, being a good friend and all. He took my hand and led me off to the side while the bride and groom began their wedding dance. You must have forgotten he was forced into this whole thing. I smiled at the bride and groom, falling into a beautiful ballroom style of dancing. I don't recall him telling me he was in the wedding. Wow, Mr. Gorgeous played along. He really is a dick. Yep, I said. Leaves me to fend for myself. It's why I probably will be leaving him alone to deal with the rest of this after I give my regards to the family I showed up for. You weren't impressed with his skill of dancing, then? Not in the least. Well, I can't fault you. He only learned it a day ago. Talented, I said, looking around for the Johnsons while talking with this guy I'd somehow attracted like a moth to a flame. Well, save a dance for me, he said, and then he was gone. Okay. I wasn't going back to my table, so I searched out the older woman I was determined to get the flowers to. Gorgeous guy or not, I was done with this whole wedding affair. I found her, and she was sitting with the Johnsons. 2 birds, 1 stone. Ashley Taylor? Mr. Johnson's gray eyes met mine as he stood. You look fantastic, dear. These are for that sweet woman over there, I said as I handed the flowers to him, and pointed toward the elderly woman in a conversation with who I presumed was his wife. It is nice seeing you. My dad sends his best wishes, but hasn't been feeling well these days. I'll give these to my mother, he said as he reached over and laid the bouquet on the table. Is he still having difficulty after losing your mother? He's just stubborn, doing his own thing. It could be his way of grieving, but let's not bring that up. I smiled at the kind man. We are so grateful for all you've done, and so excited for today. Well, I'm honored you accepted, sweetheart, he said nicely. I have a dance with my daughter. I'll catch up with Mark in the morning. Good to see you, kid. I nodded and was left standing there, watching Mr. Johnson slide through the crowd and out to his daughter. Fingers interlacing with mine caused me to jump. I looked over at Mr. G, standing at my side as if we were a serious couple, and all jokes were cast off to the side in the whole husband-wife thing. May I ask what you're doing? I asked softly. Holding your hand, waiting for our dance, of course. You are quite bold, I said. Listen, it was nice, but I seriously need to get out of here. You're not leaving me again. I lost you once, last night, after not being on top of my game. I'm not losing you again. Funny, I answered. If you want to play this game, then who the hell are you? His eyes slid down to where I stood almost a foot shorter than him, in heels. Most people call me Mitch, he said. And you? Most people call me Ash, I smiled. With each word this guy said, he slackened the imaginary ropes of tension tethered to each of my nerves. But to the people I've just met, I'm Ashley. Well, since we both confirmed our husband and wife future back there, I believe I'll stick with Ash. You are presumptuous, aren't you? I get what I want, yes. He grinned, not letting that comment naturally escalate into the douchebag category where it belonged. And if you don't? His eyes fixed mine onto them. Trust me, I'll have you in my bed tonight. I melted into a pile of God knows what with the sound of his sultry voice, his daring smile, his ocean blue eyes I was now swimming in. I had no response to that, but the heat between my legs he'd conjured with that response told me I was about to be the one sending out the morning after text like Liz had. The difference was this was a guy I think I would hate myself for not fucking, not the other way around. The music changed. The atmosphere changed. And the next thing I knew, I was in his arms, being twirled out on the dance floor. Thank you, Mom, for insisting I take the dance classes I swore I'd hate you for. I fell into perfect step with each salsa and tango move this guy kept switching to. Luckily, we didn't cause too much of a scene, but for the first time in too long, I felt wild and free. We both laughed, made silly trick dance moves together, and suddenly I was lost in some carefree world with this Mitch guy. I wasn't letting go of this gift of liberation I was experiencing. The best part of this was that he had no idea who I was. I didn't have to see his brow crease with fake concern for Dad and me over losing my mom. That's what this trip seemed to have turned into. It was like having to relive her death every time someone asked how we were doing, when in truth, I still had no answer for that. It only sent the emotion of rage to the surface, which was unfair to anyone who showed concern. It was a constant battle. Hell, I still hadn't gone to her grave. Part of me couldn't accept her losing the battle against the cancer she'd fought so hard against. Now I knew why my dad wasn't jumping at the idea of coming to this wedding. This whole trip was conjuring raw emotions. As I twirled and was caught at the waist by Mitch's strong hands, he was somehow healing these freshly reopened wounds. Thank God I ran into him with my drink, and now he might be able to enjoy the fact that he always got what he wanted. Except for this time, this was what I wanted. If I took him up on an offer to sleep with him, it would be for me, not him. And looking at how handsome he was, I highly doubted he would have hurt feelings if we used each other for one night and then went our separate ways. Chapter 4. Ash. Quite a few drinks later, I was in my dream guy's arms as we fumbled through the door and into his hotel room. My body was practically ignited in flames from the exclusive elevator ride up. Mitch's hands all over me while we kissed as old lovers reunited would. He tasted so good. His cologne was keeping me steadily under his trance of needing this more than I knew. His hands were soft yet firm and pulling my arms above my head while his lips pressed along my neck. I was trying to keep my legs from buckling under the way he was making me feel against the wall, his hard cock pressed against my stomach. This was going to be the best damn night of my life. Fuck, he said, his teeth nipping at my hard nipples. Your moans are going to make me fuck you before reinforcements arrive, he said in a husky voice. I ran my hands through his soft, tousled hair while his desperate hands found the delicate side zipper of my dress. My eyes were closed and probably should have stayed that way, but in another gasp of air, as I tried to control myself from coming just by the guy virtually worshipping my body in the way he touched and kissed my flesh, they opened. Holy shit, I said, pausing in shock at the room we were in. Are you the president or some prince from another country? I asked, nearly killing the pursuit of the only reason I was in this extravagant, too big for one-person room. He didn't let it stop him. His hands ran down my sides as my dress fell into a pile at my feet. He kissed down the center of my stomach to my legs, his fingertips gently caressing the sparks of electricity his lips created as they trailed down the inside of my thigh to my ankle. Damn, he's good, I thought, leaning against the wall as he studiously took off each one of my heels. Then I was in his arms, his lips capturing mine again. His tongue aggressively found mine as we walked through this place that was larger than my dad's house. I was involved in his tasteful kiss, but my eyes were actively noticing the baby grand piano he carried me past, the floor-to-ceiling glass doors that led out to a ridiculously large-sized balcony, and the other unnecessary items that added to the importance of the person who would stay in a room like this, or too hard to look away from. He placed my ass on a bar counter, spreading my legs while he stood in between them. The next thing I knew, my strapless bra was off while he nipped and sucked softly against the flesh of my neck, using his fingers to roll my hard nipples between them. My head fell back, legs opening further as I allowed him to swallow me up, body and soul. The throbbing between my legs became painful. My body craved this man as he woke up every last cell of pleasure throughout my entire body. "As much as I appreciate your sexy ass in this thong," he said, his fingers pulling against the sides of it, "I'm not a fan of it concealing the one part of your body I'm going to make sure is fucked until the sun rises." His eyes were dark, and his face sexier than ever before. I didn't think he could get any more handsome. An enchanting tone serenaded through his hotel room. That's when I saw the devil in this man's eyes as he smiled. He teased my chin with a quick kiss, stepped back, and the hunger in his eyes as they roamed over my fully exposed body had me nearly climaxing by his expression alone. "Give me a second," he said, and then took off in the direction of where the grand piano was positioned in the center of the living room. With this second of reprieve, my brain began firing back up and started to work again. I looked over to find my thong torn and cast aside on the counter. How did I miss that? I thought, wondering when he managed to tear the underwear from my body. Now that my brain was taking back its control, I was feeling a bit vulnerable and quite fucking stupid, sitting on some bar counter completely undressed. I slid off the counter, not knowing what the fuck to do. That's when I noticed him walking back in with a box of condoms. "What the hell?" I asked, laughing as he placed the box on the bar. "Until tonight, that butler was just a fucking nuisance," he said, gripping my waist and hoisting me back up onto the counter. "Wine?" he asked, his eyes softer and more humorous now. "Yeah," I answered, grabbing his silver bow tie and halting him from leaving my naked ass on the counter again. "But I'm not going to be the only one sipping wine naked." He smirked. "I can't help it if I'm better at removing clothes than you are." He arched his brow at me. "Get to work," he said, stepping back, arms up, giving me full access to undressing him. I needed that wine. I'd been out of commission in the sex department for far too long. Since before Mom died 2 years ago, at least. I had to absorb the confidence pouring off this man, and that's precisely what I did to keep a steady pace at undressing him, slowly. Beneath his shirt were strong abs that highlighted his tanned and soft skin. His muscles were what artists created, what models worked hard to achieve to make the front page of a magazine. He was a god. There was no doubt about this. He licked his lips, his white teeth gently covering his bottom lip as he watched me take in the beauty of his perfect body. He reached for the button of his pants. I was obviously going way too slow for his plans, but I batted them away, seeing the veins in his biceps popped and lining his arms in a way that carved out his unimaginably perfect-sized arms. After his pants fell to the floor, I fought against his hard cock to free it from the boxer briefs he wore. Fuck me now, I thought, seeing the size of at least 9 or more inches that my dripping wet entrance clenched in response to. I instinctively dropped to my knees, running my hands down his muscular legs, and couldn't resist licking his perfectly groomed balls. Both of his hands reached forward as he groaned, and his dick bounced in reaction to the first time I found a man's testicles sexy and tasteful. "God damn," he breathed out. "Suck my cock," he pleaded with me. Enjoying the fact that he was at my mercy, I played further into what I knew he was struggling with. He was the one groaning in pleasure now, and I was the one controlling whether or not he'd come before he got a chance to use the condom box that he somehow managed to send for. I had no idea who this man was, but to be in a place like this, and from what I could gather, he was one important individual. The lack of knowledge both of us had of each other made this even more pleasurable to me. I didn't want to know any more than I already knew, and he wasn't going to know anything other than possibly questioning whether or not I was virgin after not having sex in a few very long years. I licked under his length, my tongue capturing the pre-cum dripping from his tip. He pulled my hair into his fist, and I was only halfway down his length before I could swear he made a grunting sound of coming in my mouth. In that same moment, his cock was pulled from my throat, and in a swift motion, Mitch used all the glorious muscles I was previously worshipping to pick me up. I wrapped my legs around his waist, crossed my feet at my ankles, and graciously accepted his hard and desperate kiss. He laid me back onto his bed, covering my body with his, and framed my face with his hands. "There is no fucking way I'm getting off before you, Ash," he said. His mouth was on mine, both of us kissing aggressively while his hands slid down to my soaking wet entrance. "You're so wet," he said, pulling away and kissing along my breast. I reflexively tightened beneath him after he slid his fingers inside me. His forehead fell to the center of my chest as he gently slid his fingers in and out of my pussy. He seemed to be breathing along with the motions that were working on loosening up the sadly neglected for too long slit between my legs. "You," he breathed out huskily, "are so..." Exhale again. "Tight." He managed, while looking along the outside of my breast before bringing his eyes back to mine. I went to answer his seductive eyes, but arched my back and bucked my hips against him when he turned his fingers and started massaging my G-spot. "Oh my God," I said, coming all over his hand after only a few strokes to the spot my past 2 boyfriends could never find, nor did they consider looking for either. "That's fucking right, Ash," he said breathlessly. "You're so tight and wet," he exhaled. "Please, tell me you're not a virgin," he chuckled. "I think you can easily tell I haven't fucked a guy in a..." My breath hitched when his thumb began making swirls over my clit. "Oh my God, I'm going to fucking come again," he smirked. "Like I said, all night." He sucked my bottom lip as my body went into another spasm of glorious pleasure. "And I'm taking you up, Annie position, on what I wanted to do to you since hearing that fucking name at the coffee shop." I closed my eyes, trying to ride the ecstasy of coming from this man's perfect touch, my flesh responding to him as if he were some kind of sex god. "Your turn," I said, grabbing the box of condoms that made it to the room with us. I manipulated his body to lie on his back while I tore a condom out of the box. He pulled his hands up and clasped them behind his head. His confidence was about to be shaken. "Roll it on." He lifted his chin with a sultry grin. After putting the condom on, my pussy aching for this massive cock, I slid myself down onto him. Mr. Confidence practically choked, eyes rolling back, and his hands were instantly firm on my waist. When his eyes reopened, his hungry expression was almost dangerous. "Holy hell. Fuck. God. Shit." He pretty much chanted out every cuss word in his vocabulary while I slid myself up and down his length. His hands came up to mine, and he intertwined our fingers. "You like that?" I arched a brow at the sexy god who was at the mercy of my tight pussy. He didn't answer with words. Instead, he used that strength to flip me onto my back, my palms still pinned under his while he pumped harder and faster into me. "Tell me you can come with me like this," he begged. As soon as I reached for my clit, wanting to come with him, he pulled out of me. "No fucking way. That clit's mine tonight. Turn your ass over," he ordered. "You're coming while I ride that G-spot, angel." He lined himself behind me and smoothed his hand over my lower back. "Arch that ass into me," he said, and I did. "Yes," I screeched when the sensitive part inside me felt his thickness spreading me apart while it massaged along my G-spot. "Oh, my..." I breathed and bit into the pillow as he ran his fingers over my clit, fucked my G-spot, and used his other hand to rub my nipple. He started pumping himself deeper and thrusting harder into me. His dick practically felt like it was in my throat with how hard and long he was fucking me. His groans were raspy and breathless until he made a loud grunt of pleasure before his hands caught himself on each side of me, his hands balling the sheets up into his fists. He slowly moved in and out of me while kissing the back of my neck and over my shoulders. He eventually pulled out and flipped me over. He gently caressed my breasts, kissing my arm while I caught my breath, still horny as fuck. I hoped he meant what he said by fucking all night because we hadn't even begun to curb the pleasure that I hadn't realized I'd neglected myself of in far too long. That was a lovely introduction to what we'll be up doing for the rest of the night. He confirmed my internal wishes. Oh, I smiled over at him, his knuckles coming up to massage along my jaw. What's next on your agenda? To fucking marry you so we can do this for the rest of my life. He smiled. I heard the nervousness in your voice, asking if I was a virgin. I teased. He pursed his lips. You didn't feel like you'd ever been fucked. That's because it's been too long, I sighed. Then I am about to take great pleasure in fucking that hot pussy back to life again. You think you can handle it? I giggled. It's sort of what I do for a living. He brushed his finger over my nose. Oh, I looked around the grand room. I didn't realize a gigolo made this kind of money. He rolled off the bed and walked into the bathroom. I heard the shower turn on, and then he walked in, literally with the fucking light of the moon peering into the room, spotlighting his perfect body and dick that I was still shocked I was able to take as easily as I did. Get your sweet ass in here, Angel, he said, pulling me from the bed and throwing me over his shoulder. Round 2 starts in the shower, and I'm going to suck that dripping wet pussy dry. I met his mouth with urgency and excitement when we entered the large shower. And I'm going to drink every last ounce of cum out of your hard cock. He pulled away with a glint of humor in his eyes. Thank fucking God that you spilled that drink on me, he said, soaping my body up. And that fate did see to it we ended up just like this. I turned to him, more serious. Don't get too attached, I smiled. It's just one night. We're just strangers enjoying fucking and the fact that the universe made sure we wound up in this position, I said. He rolled his bottom lip between his teeth. If it's just one night, he said, swear to me we don't stop fucking until the sun comes up. I'm down for that, I added. That's when I spent the entire night in the arms of the man of my dreams, fucking all over that massive apartment hotel room and wishing I had never snuck out when I heard him breathing deep in sleep by the time the sun peered through the curtains. As my Uber drove away from the luxurious hotel, I chewed on my nail, wondering if I should have left my number. I knew I was never going to have it that good ever again. I glanced at the time. I was pressing my luck with the boarding time for my plane anyway. Shit. Well, fate did lead us together more than once, and I not only had the best sex in my life, but I strangely found myself being rescued by the man who seemed to keep popping up from out of nowhere on this crazy weekend in San Francisco. Time to get my head straight again. I had to get home and get rejuvenated after this man worshipped my body all night long. For the first time in too long, I felt alive again, like anything was possible. I felt like pursuing my dreams of art more than ever before. I would go home and return to my paintings and sculpting as I did back when I was happy and wasn't stuck in the grief of my mom's death. Sure, it was a one-night stand, but it was also more than that. Whether he meant the words he said or not, I felt beautiful again, like I was worth something again. There was something about this Mitch guy who called me his angel, or at least that was my fuck nickname for him throughout the night. There was something more than just getting fucked that woke me back up again. I'd been on autopilot this entire time since losing Mom. Until now, I hadn't realized I let myself die with her. I would never forget Mr. Gorgeous and how he oddly saved me with each interaction we had this entire crazy weekend. Part of me wanted to miss the flight and spend the whole day in bed with him like he'd begged me to before we both finally fell asleep in each other's arms, as if we were the bride and groom from the day before. No. I have to keep my head on straight. It was one night. The guy was obviously a player, and there was no way I was entering into some strange fantasy that anything more than sex with him could work. I didn't need a train wreck relationship. I needed to get moving again, now that I was jump-started back into a life that I'd closed myself off from. There was a whole world out there I'd blocked, and doing something daring and sexy like I did last night was pretty much my swan dive back into life.
Chapter 5. Jake Mitchell. 1 year later. I stood in the nurse's station listening in on reports from my patients while flipping through their charts to ensure their recovery was moving along well after the 2 surgeries that I'd performed this week. I tuned out the giggles and lack of professionalism coming out of Jackie's mouth, the one nurse who kicked ass in her job yet grated on my nerves whenever there were newbies around. Unfortunately, I had interns standing on each side of me, so I couldn't tell Jackie to shut the fuck up. Now certainly wasn't the time for messing around. The interns needed to take this part seriously. They could find out more about how I functioned as the chief of the cardiovascular unit of St. John's at a different date. Hell, most of them probably wouldn't last anyway.
Dr. Mitchell, do you have anything to add? Or are you too busy for all of us this morning? The RN questioned as my eyes roamed over Mr. Jackson's chart. Did the woman seriously call me out like a first-grade student who wasn't paying attention to her class? 4 other doctors were standing here doing the same shit as me, checking our patients' charts for shit's sake. You worked the graveyard shift as the charge nurse, did you not? I eyed her, noticing the deadpan looks on the other nurses' faces standing around her. Yes,
she said, placing her hand on the counter, her silver and short curled hair glistening under the fluorescent lighting of the nurse's station.
Is there a problem?
I gave the order for Miss Davis to be brought to the CCU floor from the SICU before I left last evening. Why am I not seeing her charts here? I asked the single most important question on my mind since arriving.
Her charts aren't with us.
Are you fucking kidding me? I thought, gritting my teeth in anger, knowing this bitch dropped the goddamn ball and gave herself one less patient to care for. Well, I guess the interns were about to learn very quickly that I didn't put up with shit on my ward. Nor is she, I said, preventing myself from slamming my patient charts onto the desk before me. Nurse O'Brien said she was calling down to you to have Miss Davis transported to this floor for monitoring, and she was to be here so I could check in on her this morning when I arrived. Care to explain why you believed leaving my patient in the care of the SICU staff was okay?
Dr. Mitchell.
Her eyes were wide under my glare.
It wasn't like... We were full and understaffed last night.
I narrowed my eyes at her lie, then looked over at Glenn and Rose, the 2 RNs rolling their eyes at her answer. Is this true? Were all of you understaffed and room 394 couldn't accept a new patient? Glenn gave me a look that told me I needed to figure out the charge nurse was not only lying, but she also refused my order so she could sit on her lazy ass all night long.
She was Jackie's transfer. We were busy, but not necessarily understaffed, of course, Dr. Mitchell,
Rose said while Glenn looked as annoyed and pissed as I was. Must have been another shitty night with Jackie acting like she owned the place. We'll talk about this formally later, I said. Report to my office after the shift change, and I'll have Sandy push back my first patient this morning. She went to talk, but halted when I inhaled deeply. It's negligence on your part to ignore any doctor's orders, and there are few people on earth who loathe insubordination more than I do, I said severely. I will not tolerate it, whether or not you've been with our medical group for over 25 years. If I order something, I want it done when I arrive the next morning unless there is a valid excuse as to why it can't be done. I will not have my patients' lives hanging in the balance because you think you know better than everyone else." Her cheeks were turning a shade of red that might have made me feel bad if it were any other circumstance. Unfortunately for Nurse Test My Patience, I was not in the mood. "While we're dealing with the topic of the best care for our patients, I would like you to transport Ms. Davis here personally, and then you can help prepare her room. And while you're finally doing as instructed, I'll be coming up with some bullshit excuse as to why I'm an hour behind with my office appointments today." "Yes, doctor." She straightened her scrubs and held her head high. She might have been a combative old bat, but she knew I was right. And she knew that shutting up was best, lest I decided to continue to humiliate her in front of the interns. "The interns will accompany you," I said flatly. "Explain to them that I do not tolerate laziness from my nurses while you apologize for being late in bringing Ms. Davis to her new room for care." She stomped off, the young interns looking unsure of how to act after my tirade. Fuck this shit. I did not tolerate laziness or power nurse shit in the slightest. Now a charge nurse who acts like it's her family, not mine, who funded the entire cardiac wing of this hospital is calling me out, more than likely because 3 of the interns were cute and she wanted to act like she pulls strings. Fuck that noise. Old bat nurse Jackie was convinced I'd fucked an intern once, and the money-hungry intern I turned down saw an opportunity to cash in on my family's money, so she didn't hesitate to play along with that narrative. My family lawyers backed my ass up on that fiasco. Sadly, it didn't result in Jackie's termination too, only Celine's. Fuck. What a way to start my morning. "Dr. Mitchell?" The voice of Dr. King was humored when he called my name softly. "I know you're pissed, but you realize she doesn't work for you, a doctor, right?" I smirked. "Of course I know that. She didn't argue because she knows she fucked up and got caught. Perhaps there's more she doesn't want to be exposed about her practically taking the night off last night." I arched my eyebrow at the cardiologist. "Well, there are rumors. That shit is my brother's problem. He can uncover the HR issues she's getting herself tangled up in because she wants to mess around with Dr. Daniels in ER," I said as Dr. King and I walked farther down the hall, away from the nurses' station. "Your brother sees her as an asset to this floor. She is a good nurse," King answered. "Jim may see her that way, but I see her as an ass." "Calling her out because she has no respect for a doctor in his late 30s? Isn't that what it's all about?" I shook my head. "I need to call up to SICU. They might be a little shocked to see a CCU charge nurse doing a transport." I laughed at how stupid the woman was, yet she was so damn smart at the same time. King was right, though. The nurses didn't work for me, but I intentionally gave her an order to see how she would respond. Her response to following my request as if I were her boss only told me she was guilty of screwing the ER doc last night and didn't want any further questioning. Dr. King left with the rest of the nurses who were starting their shifts, and I had to handle the BS of Jackie doing a transport now. I exhaled my frustration as I reached for the phone, sincerely concerned about my patient who was left on the floor that I'd cleared her to leave. "Yeah," I said when the nurse answered. "This is Dr. Mitchell. I have a charge nurse heading up to retrieve Miss Davis. The patient has been cleared on my orders to be in CCU." "A charge nurse?" she asked in confusion. "Jackie." "Got it," the lady answered. "And yes, we received your orders last night and expected transport hours ago. Jackie declined our transfer, but we'll sort it out now. I'll have Miss Davis ready." "There are 4 interns with Jackie. Please ensure that Ms. Davis is informed that I'll be sure to visit her after hours today personally." "Dr. Mitchell," the woman said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "It's Jai," she chuckled. "You sound pretty upset." Jai floated to the SICU. "Hey, Jai." I relaxed some. The only woman to have ever tempted me in this place was this brunette with bright green eyes when she was floated to work on my floor a couple of times. Yeah, I'm a bit upset that my patient was left on that floor. I want her in CCU so she can at least see one family member. Jesus.
Jackie was on one last night, Jai said. As I said, she refused the transfer, said it could wait until the next shift. She stated that CCU was full and understaffed last night.
God damn it, you old fucking bag. Jai laughed at my silence, probably well aware that I was internally cursing out the old bat. My thoughts diverted to Jai's appearance that matched her contagious laughter. Why? Most likely because my brain was melting down at this point and short-circuiting because I couldn't throw something. The thought of Jai's hair color did a brain switch on me right then and there. And now I was thinking about Ash. Again. Fuck me, Ash, you will be the death of me, I thought, pissed at the girl who haunted me and turned me into some desperate fool, wishing I'd never lost her. How could I not shake this chick after a solid year already? God damn it. I had to stay focused and steer clear of thinking about the best sex I'd ever had over a year ago.
You there?
Jai asked.
Oh, hey, Jackie's here.
And pissed off. She laughed again.
I'll make sure we get your patient ready to be transported down. Jackie might have to help if she doesn't want to be here for an hour, though.
The whole point I sent her up. And thank you, I managed, and hung up. I proceeded through the rooms, checking in on my patients and ensuring they were recovering well or answering any post-op questions. I slid the curtain back and nodded to the respiratory therapist who was fighting with Gilbert Jefferson. I smirked at the 70-year-old whose last words as he was going under anesthesia were, "You'd better not kill me, you son of a bitch." I looked at the veteran's Navy tattoo and had nothing but respect for this man. But he was salty as hell, and I wasn't surprised he was giving Jenny a hard time over not wanting to do his breathing exercises. "Doc," he said in his raspy voice, "tell her to get on out of here." I smiled at Jenny, then looked at Gilbert. "If I tell her to leave you alone, then your last words before I put you to sleep tonight just might come true." He squinted and grumbled, mustering the most dangerous glare he could at me. "You're an asshole, Doc." "I've been called worse," I encountered. "You need to do the breathing exercises or those strong lungs won't be able to cuss any of us out anymore. You and I discussed this." He waved me off. "You can go." "I'm not leaving until you take a few puffs off that machine." I arched a brow at him. "Good grief," he said, looking at Jenny for help. "Doctor's orders," she smiled at him. "He's too young to be a doctor anyway." The old sailor started in with his insults on me. "Tell that to your heart that's thanking me for the quadruple bypass." I looked at Jenny. "Jackie will be down with a new patient, Miss Davis. I'll make sure she doesn't leave until she confirms that Gilbert here is properly doing his breathing work for you." I finished with my rounds and called Jackie out and away from the patients and the interns. "If you ever speak to me or call me out in front of patients, nurses, interns, or even the fucking janitor again, you will be working on another floor. Am I clear?" I should call her ass out on why exactly she refused the transfer after learning we were overstaffed, and Miss Davis's room was left empty all night. I didn't have time for this petty shit. King was right. She was Jim's problem once I had my 48 off. "That wasn't my intent, Jake," she stammered. "Well, it most definitely made me look like an ass on the first day for these interns. You need to stay in your lane. Don't treat me like the piece of shit you believe me to be." "I have nothing but respect for you, Dr. Mitchell." "Yeah." I shook my head in disgust. "Right. You're the best—" "Just stop." I held up my hand. "Consider yourself scolded. When I send a patient down to my floor or give orders to move them to another, do your goddamn job. I don't act like an egotistical dick of a doctor, but I can make sure you're sent to the floor where one is." She sighed. "It won't happen again. I'm sorry." "You have 4 or 5 interns to get introduced to the CCU, and it's probably going to hold you over until noon."
Heather is on now as the charge nurse. She can take over. Her eyes grew severe. True, I said, eyeing the day shift charge. She can do rounds with them, and you can leave after you find a way to apologize to Ms. Davis for not bringing her down. I need to go. My patients are already in the office. I'm stacked in after 2 surgeries yesterday. Thank you, Jake, she said, and then stormed off to make sure Ms. Davis's room was ready. Shit. What a fucking good morning. I had to shake all this off. Tomorrow I was on call all day, and if I was going to be dealing with any bullshit, the old bat was going to be on call with me. I needed to be in a good working mood with the woman, or I'd strangle her before the 24-hour on-call was over. The next day I was able to catch up on a shitload of backed-up work. I sat in the nurse's station and sipped on my coffee while thumbing through the evening shift change paperwork. The interns were annoying as hell, but shit, I was in their shoes once too. In truth, it was a slow day, so they were floating through the floor like disheveled messes, trying to find stuff to do. I should have known that once I took a bite of the sandwich that it took Jackie an hour to bring me. The call that the interns had been praying for all day would come in. I flipped through the man's chart, who was being rushed into my OR, looking at everything in his medical history. CPR was being used to keep the 65-year-old alive, and now it was my job to open him up and do what I did best. With the stealth and the supreme skill of my staff, all hands were on deck as I went to work, saving the man from the heart attack that was desperately trying to steal him from the world. I performed the bypass as effortlessly as most people would tie their shoes. 3 of his arteries were blocked, but still allowing proper blood flow. The culprit was the plaque that blocked one of his arteries entirely. After bypassing that, his body and heart fell into a sound rhythm. Unfortunately, after 3 hours with this patient, I knew blocked arteries weren't the man's primary issue. "Well done, Dr. Mitchell," my attending physician acknowledged while we worked to close up the wound in his chest. "I will take it from here." I stepped back, knowing the patient was in good care with Dr. Chi. "I'll inform the family of his stability and what the future holds for the patient." I looked at the interns. 2 of you may join me. As you already know, his family is out in the waiting room and they're in distress. They don't need the audience of too many interns. I pulled off the glasses, mask, gloves, and the rest of my protective gear and tossed them in the hazmat can, and I walked out with 2 interns trailing me. I hated greeting patients in my scrubs and scrub hat like this. Something about it was too sterile and intimidating for people who were waiting to hear if their loved one was alive or dead. I suppose there was no appropriate attire to receive such news, though. I hit the auto-open button with my elbow that opened the doors to the visitors' waiting room of the ER wing to the hospital. The family stood, and my eyes widened when I could have sworn the ghost of my Ash stood amongst the 2 older men and a woman in the family room. I had to blink a few times. Nope, it was her, in the flesh. "Good evening," I smiled, peeling my eyes from Ash and looking at the man who seemed to command the room. "I assume you're the family of Mark Taylor?" "He's my dad, yes?" Ash pried her way up between the 2 men who stood like bodyguards in front of her. "Please, God." She covered her mouth with her hands and tears poured out of her puffy eyes. If only I could bring her into my arms and tell her he's going to be okay, for now. The surgery went well. He's now in recovery. I pulled my brain out of Jake Mitch mode and into supremely focused surgeon mode, the mode that I was in before I saw her stunning bronze eyes. He's going to be fine. A nurse will be out shortly to go over the details with all of you. Can any of you tell me who his current cardiologist is? There was nothing filled in on his chart or paperwork, I said, thumbing through the papers I had and then looking up at the family again. "He hasn't seen a doctor since before my mother." Ash's voice cracked, and she turned into the embrace of the strong man she clung to. I brought my attention to his red-rimmed eyes that were glassy and hardened from holding back tears of fear. "The nurse will set up an appointment with a cardiologist if he doesn't have one. She will go over the details as to why he must be seen soon after he's released and recovering from this surgery." "What does that mean, Dr. Mitchell?" the man asked.
He will need further evaluation. He is stable, but it is critical that he be seen by a cardiologist much sooner than most of our patients after they're released to recover at home. Shit. Ash needed to know her dad had a very critical situation with his enlarged heart, and the only way to fix it would be a transplant. I would need to inform Jackie that Mark Taylor must be my future patient. Being that Mark Taylor was my Ash's dad, I didn't trust him in anyone's care but mine. After seeing Ash's reaction to almost losing her father, I internally prayed I could convince both of them of a heart transplant as soon as a donor was available. I had the best record in the nation on transplants. The media was interviewing me about that next week. Ash would lose her dad if we didn't get him a new heart. He had multiple issues, but the main problem, from what I saw without the machines, was that his tricuspid valve was not functioning correctly, otherwise known as Epstein's anomaly. I'd learn more once he was my patient. Right now, I had to hope he'd accept me as his doctor, the idea of a transplant, and then, of course, the donor heart. I left the room, Ash watching me through tear-stained eyes, and me not being able to do a damn thing about that. I was some fucking idiot flirt who'd fucked her all night in my room. How the fucking hell was she supposed to take me seriously a year later, walking into a room in scrubs, announcing her dad was fine, and doing my usual doctor routine of leaving the rest to the nurse to go over with the family? I walked back to where Mr. Taylor was being transported out of the OR and up to the SICU wing of the hospital until he was recovered enough to be admitted to my floor. I ran my hand over my scrub hat, pulling the navy blue material from my head, and ran the back of my hand over my forehead. I had to see Ash again. I had to help her and her dad. Call it doctor's instincts or just part of this crazy world of being stuck wishing I'd never let her walk out of the room that morning. I'd forgotten how beautiful this woman was, how she mysteriously did what none other could do, capture my attention solely for her. Hell, we had to be meant for something. These crazy run-ins had to have meant more than I knew. Chapter 6. Jake.
Last patient, and then you're gone until Monday, correct?
Sandy, the receptionist, asked at the end of my long-ass Friday. Correct, I said. See you then. Enjoy the weekend.
You too, Jake,
she said with a beaming smile. I walked through the empty waiting room smiling at her boyfriend. Are you two sure you're old enough to drink? I teased the two. Sandy laughed, pulling up her purse on her shoulder and shutting the receptionist's alcove lights off.
Asks the man-child chief surgeon,
she joked back, coming through the door. How are you doing, Doc? Her boyfriend, Gabe, asked as he reached out to shake my hand. Oh, I'm sure Sandy can fill you in on the nonsense of the week, I smirked. You two enjoy the beach this weekend, I said, knowing he was a great surfer, having surfed with him after Sandy begged me to hang out with him and give her my take on the kid. These two practically lived at the beach and loved it when I offered up the beach house to them for weekend trips to Malibu when I saw her at wit's end with the others in my office staff. She was like a younger sister to me, and that was the only reason I trusted her with the house. Surprisingly, I approved of Gabe. He wasn't an idiot or a player. She snagged herself an old soul who made me look like the immature guy no one should dare to enter a relationship with, lest they end up neglected or cheated on. That was until Ash waltzed into my life, and all that plain, crazy-ass nightlife shit came to a screeching halt for me. I couldn't nail down the effects she had on my sorry ass, but until her dad was rushed to the ER that night, I could have sworn she was sent into my life that weekend in San Francisco as prayers answered for revenge from all the women I had screwed over with my fuck 'em and leave 'em lifestyle. Speaking of taming my nightlife, I had rounds at the hospital tonight before I was free to catch up with the guys at Darcy's. Mr. Taylor, I said, smiling at Ash's dad, who looked 1,000 times better since post-op checkups. You about ready to get out of this place? I asked, seeing his vibrant expression while flipping through his charts. I see you're following all the rules. I smiled down at how well this patient was doing. Except for one. I folded my arms, the curtain opening behind me. me catching a glance of 2 female interns kindly announcing their entrance to the room. "Listen, Dr. Mitchell," he said, giving me an authoritative stare. "I've been walking, doing the breathing." He held his arms out for vitals to be checked. "He's doing great." Ash's voice was like a wave of energy that soothed me to my core. Fuck. I smiled at her, sitting next to her father's bed. I had to hold my shit together. The last thing I needed was to find out she didn't remember who I was. Don't think that thought hadn't entered my mind more than once since the night her dad was brought in. Now I needed to keep my bedside manner the same. My God, if her dad wasn't here, fucking stop this shit and focus. "He's our best patient," Nurse Rose said. "Charming the ladies, eh?" I smiled at Rose, then Mr. Taylor. Wrong fucking choice of words if Ash has to put 2 and 2 together and realize the man she'd fucked all night was not Mitch but an alias I'd used. She'd screamed that name more than once, and my dick was going to start to betray me if I didn't knock this shit off. How the fuck can I think with this beauty in my presence? Her low-cut shirt and tight pants weren't helping my sorry ass at the moment either. "What can I say?" Mr. Taylor played along with all the young and beautiful women in the room. Exercising the supreme skill of focus, my ability to think in chaotic environments, and having a meticulous physician's mindset while I was in the hospital, I switched over to that side of my brain so I could stay on track. "Well, I keep getting reports stating you will be missed greatly by all of my staff when you're discharged tomorrow morning," I said, eyeing his charts again. "Have you worked with a nurse to set up your cardiologist appointment?" "I mentioned that I preferred seeing you, Dr. Mitchell, but you aren't accepting new patients," he sighed. "We'll find another if you can refer—" "Jackie, your old hag-ass is mine," I thought, knowing that bitch would pull this shit behind my back. "Nonsense," I said, not looking over at Ash, who sat perfectly still in the corner of my eye. "I will have the discharge orders state that I will be taking you as a new patient," I said, writing that down in my charts. "You live close to St. John's?" "We just moved here," Ash spoke up. "This part of LA County is a bit crazier than Santa Clarita." With my feet planted firmly, I steadied myself and looked at her as my patient's daughter, and not the woman I desperately could not get out of my thoughts. "That it is," I managed, sounding like a jackass. "Listen," I said, bringing the seriousness that I knew was at hand to the surface of my mind. "I'm sure you were informed of what I found while bypassing the artery that failed." "Yes," he said, eyes guiltily looking over to his daughter in shame and then back to me. "I just never gave a second thought to the fact that my heart defect would come back and bite me in the ass." He chuckled. "Dad!" Ash rolled her eyes, and then she looked at me. "Can we lower his dosage on the pain meds?" I smirked at Mr. Taylor. "I assume this is your daughter?" I asked, seeing Ash's face fall the second I said the words. What the fuck did I say? "Yup," he shrugged. "Always keeping me in line." "Well, she's about to keep you awake in pain all night if you don't stop swearing, it seems." She leaned into him, all humor gone. "I lost Mom to something she couldn't prevent, and I'm sure as hell not losing you too." He ran his hand over her cheek as a tear slipped out of the corner of her eye. "I know, sweetheart. That's why we're pretty lucky to have Dr. Mitchell take my sorry butt as a patient." "The discharge nurse will go over the rest with both of you. I just left my office, and it looks like you're in luck, Mr. Taylor." I smiled at him. "I was informed my Monday afternoon appointment canceled. Hopefully you'll be able to make that slot." "We'll take the first available," he said, his eyes apologizing to his daughter for reasons I could not tell. I scribbled on the chart and flipped it over. "I'll have the information sent with your discharge papers to my office," I said. "Any other questions you have for me before meeting on Monday?" "We're good, thanks," Ash said. "All right. I'll see you on Monday, Mr. Taylor." "Hey, Doc," he called out. I turned back. "Thanks for saving my life." I nodded. "Thank your daughter." I smiled at her. She was extremely proactive, And after reading your charts and the events that led you to my OR, I can safely say she played the most critical role in keeping you alive, sir." "That she did." He patted her hand on his cheek. I couldn't stand here and gawk at this endearing moment. He was the father of the woman I couldn't get out of my head. A woman who, if she did remember me, I had no idea what the fuck she thought of me after our night together a year ago. God knows I wasn't acting like a goddamn chief surgeon in my room with her all night. I turned to leave, keeping it in my head that I was at least grateful she was in my life, if only by her dad becoming my patient. "Dr. Mitchell?" Ash's voice called out softly from behind where I was walking toward the nurse's station. I stopped and turned back to her. "Yes," I answered, entirely at the mercy of her long black lashes highlighting her brown eyes as they peered up at me with uncertainty. Her face scrunched up into some adorable yet confused expression. "I think we've met before. Under different circumstances, of course." "Of course." I was smiling inside only as I searched for the right words. "Anyway," she seemed to shake off the words like a disease. "Thanks for everything you did to save my dad's life. I've been told more than once that he shouldn't have survived, but that Dr. Mitchell being on call is the reason he's still going to be with me." Her voice cracked, and she brushed a tear from her cheek before I know I would have naturally wiped it away for her. "He's recovering well," I said. "But he must have an open mind when we meet on Monday." "My dad finally admitted he's had that heart defect since birth." She exhaled in anger. "He makes me so angry sometimes. How could he never tell me about this?" "Did he ever have a cardiologist before?" I asked. "Perhaps his medical doctor would have known this too." "I don't know," she said, slipping her hands into her pockets, my eyes following the gesture, yet getting stuck in her tan skin tone and those perfect breasts I'd worshipped along with the rest of her body that night. "One night, Jake, one night, and now you're back with the woman who brought you to your fucking knees." "These are details we'll work out when I meet with him," I said, focusing on something other than wanting to take Ash back to my office, or in my car, or right here in front of everyone just to hear those moans coming from her again. I had to get out of here before I did do something to screw my life up because of this woman. "Then I guess we'll see you on Monday." "It'll be difficult for him to travel. How far are you two from the hospital?" "About an hour," she answered. "I'll arrange for more comfortable medical transport," I said. "I also have comfortable furniture in one of my office rooms. We'll meet there for his comfort." She pinched her lips together. Did she even know what she was doing to me? Half of my brain was trying to restrict my dick from jumping out of this suit so I could fuck her tight pussy again. To feel. "See you then." While my mind was focused on keeping my shit together, she spun around, her perfect auburn hair swinging around in her ponytail. She looked exhausted and only wore leggings and a long-sleeved shirt, but she looked more beautiful than the supermodel look she'd sported at the wedding. I walked into Darcy's and saw Colin, Jim, and Alex at our usual corner booth. This was the place where we tended to hide out when none of us were in the mood for the gold-digging chicks at regular clubs. It was also the place where my best friend Colin, a neurosurgeon from St. John's, had fucked over a rich and extremely psychotic bitch. Ever since then, we'd been known inside and outside of our circle as the Billionaires Club, the assholes who only fucked chicks with money so we could save our own. "What the hell happened to you?" my older brother Jim asked as he sipped his bourbon. "I heard about your favorite RN this week," he smirked, and Colin and Alex laughed at whatever they knew outside of my company about what happened with the old bat. "Oh?" I took the scotch that was waiting for me. "Did she come clean and admit that she's fucking that dumbass ER doctor?" "No," Jim chuckled. "Looks like you have an HR complaint slapped on your ass, brother," Alex, who was Jim's best friend and president of our family's empire, said. "Oh, for fuck's sake." I rolled my eyes and took another drink. "I don't need this shit." "The hospital buzz is this: don't work the cardiac recovery unit because Dr. Mitchell is a dick who thinks the nurses work for him." Colin laughed into his gin and tonic. I eyed his disgusting drink of choice. I hated gin, but I hated this fucking nurse even more. "How do you drink that shit?" I snapped. "Easily," Colin said, and knocked back the entire contents of his glass. "Just like that, bitch," he taunted me. I ran my hands through my hair, regretting showing up here tonight. I couldn't get Ash off my mind since seeing her today. I couldn't stop reliving that night again. I was so fucked. "Take it easy, Jake," my brother laughed. "Can he get another scotch?" he asked a passing waitress before she nodded and turned to the bar. "I handled it, Jake. I'm having Jackie transferred to another hospital." He sighed. "Was she that bad?" "It's not her." I found myself biting my bottom lip, wishing I'd taken another drink before I responded to Jim. "What the fuck is wrong, then?" Jim used his big brother asshole voice on me. "Don't use your CEO bullshit tone on me," I said. "You could have run all of this past me before making that decision, you know." "You weren't at the board meeting, prick," Jim said sternly, not backing down. "On call, fucker." "Okay," Alex said, stopping Jim and me from turning this into a pissing match. "What the hell is wrong with you?" "I'm fine. Long day." I wasn't telling them about Ash. No way in hell. "Really?" Colin asked, concern in his voice. "You only act like this if you lose a patient. What the hell is going on? You're not acting right." I went to speak, but Jim interrupted. "Don't you dare say you're tired. We've watched you go for days without sleep and still entertain us with your bullshit after coming off long weeks." "It's a patient," I said, looking at Colin. "I didn't lose him, but he has more serious issues than what brought him into my OR. He's going to need a transplant, and it will kill me if I have to watch his daughter's response to him turning that idea down. She can't lose this man." The table grew silent, and I knew exactly why. "And the doctor has more concern over this young woman than his patient?" Jim pressed. "I never said that," I said flatly. "You didn't have to," Jim said. "Who is she? And how in the hell is my brother sitting here lost in thought over her?" I held my hands up. "I can't fucking do this with you three." "Why so defensive?" Colin smirked at Alex and Jim. "Fine," I said, tipping back the last of my scotch. "Remember the woman from Frisco? The one you hooked up with, and for the first time you were being walked out on and not the other way around?" Alex asked. "Yes." I took my new scotch and pointed to him. "That one." "Oh, shit, man." Colin shook his head while Jim looked at me deadpan. "You know, if you go down this road," Jim's CEO voice started in. "I've got this handled," I answered. "2 scotches in and it's handled?" Jim asked. "You're going to fuck yourself over bad if you take the man as a patient. I know you treat all of your patients like their family, but this is playing too close, especially knowing the patient's daughter that you lived in hell over for a solid month after you got home. Try a whole year. It's different. She doesn't remember me. She knew me as Mitch, not Jacob Mitchell, her dad's cardiothoracic surgeon." "Are you that fucking dumb?" Colin laughed, while the others sat back and eyed me in humor. "Last I checked, no. And yes." I rubbed my forehead. "I can't think." "You can't think because you believe she forgot who you are," Alex laughed. "And yet I can count a few women who took years to get over your just one night of fucking rule. No attachments, nothing." "And now the tables are turned on him, and he can't handle it," Jim added. "You three are ones to talk," I grumbled. "Even if she remembered who I was, can you imagine what the hell she could be thinking after I flirted like a reckless idiot and fucked her all over that goddamn hotel room?" Jim choked on his bourbon. "Well, this is all news to us, mister. I'm not telling you asshole shit. Care to give us her real name now?" "Annie," I tried to confirm, only to receive laughs from the three. "Fuck, I don't know. I told her my name was Mitch and she gave me Ash. That's all I have. aside from the fact that her dad is Mark Taylor. Well, since you decided to take on the patient's daughter you screwed a year ago, Colin smirked, then arched an eyebrow at me. So, I guess you'll be learning a lot more about the girl who made you feel like shit for sleeping with her. Colin finished with a laugh. This should be good, Alex said as he shook his head at me. This is going to be fantastic. You think you'll invite her up to the party? Jim questioned. Party? The one we're having after your interview with the news stations about your flawless record of survival rate and transplants, Jim answered. It's being catered at your beach house. How did you forget that? Fuck me, I answered. I'm not up for it. Too bad, Jim answered. It's excellent PR for the hospital, so do the interview, and if you like this woman, invite her to the house after all is done. We'd like to meet her. Yeah, not happening, I answered. You assholes are going to have every single chick you want to take your pick of up there. Afraid your eyes might wander while she's with you? Colin asked. Perhaps you might use this as your challenge if she's the one to tame the wild Jacob Mitchell. It had to have been the third scotch because I took these douches up on their stupid challenge. I agreed to bring Ash up to the place, hang around snobs and celebrities, no doubt adding to the most uncomfortable night she and I would ever have together. And that's if she took me up on my offer. Why the hell couldn't I think like a regular person right now? I needed to get laid, that was a definite fact. I hadn't been with anyone since Ash, and thank God my job kept me busy because it was certainly not like me to go an entire year without having sex. Maybe another scotch and I'd cure myself of this woman, who most likely didn't return my sappy feelings by getting laid tonight. My cock twitched at the thought, and now I was eyeing the women in the place, looking for a woman I knew I could fuck and not have to deal with the fallout after leaving in the morning. Vicky's here, I said, smiling at the guys. So she's your ex and you hate that woman, Jim answered. She's his friends with benefits partner, Colin answered. Whenever Jake needs to get a piece and doesn't want the hassle, it's Vic. Precisely, I said, the scotch fueling me into the decision further. Besides, she owes me for throwing that stupid wedding on my shoulders last minute, all while I was trying to do the bullshit keynote speaker stuff that Jim mandated out of that trip. Why the hell are you going to fuck Vicky again? Jim asked. To get the other girl out of my system. I can't take any risk in relationships, I honestly stated. I would just end up screwed in the end. The hours I work are too much for any woman in my life to handle. I need to get a grip. No shit, Colin cheered to that truth. Being a doctor himself, he knew what I was up against. Well, reconsider that because we are having another board meeting and we're changing hours on overworked doctors at St. John's. I'm not doing this without your input, Jim told me. Now, I need to get laid, I answered, getting up from the table. I'm not in the mood to talk shop about hours and cutbacks tonight. I need to get myself under control before I see the woman who's fucked my mind over again. Dumb mistake, man, Alex said. Fuck the one you like. That's the dumb mistake, my friend, I answered as I left the three staring at me as if I'd completely gone over the edge. Seeing my gorgeous fuck pal was enough to have me questioning what kind of reckless adventure I was on. Would I regret this or be glad I got this out of my system? Using Vic and, dare I even think the thought, imagining Ash's face while I... What the hell did this girl do to me? Voodoo shit? Was I under a spell or something with her? Hell if I knew.
Chapter 7. Ash. By the time Dad's Monday appointment rolled around, I was physically and mentally drained. We reached the hospital medical offices where we were to meet with the doctor. Yes, the doctor. And if the man only saw me as his patient's daughter, then that's the relationship we would move forward with. I thought about changing Dad's appointment to another cardiologist, but after I'd Googled Dr. Jacob Mitchell, MD, Chief of Cardiology, cardiothoracic surgeon, I quickly changed my mind. He was a world-renowned heart surgeon who'd won multiple medical awards. He'd graduated at the top of his class at Harvard Medical School. He was known for innovative treatment for his patients, and his success rate was through the roof. My dad was in the hands of an angel, and I somehow met the devil in the guy a year ago. I rubbed my clammy palms together, more nervous than Dad, sitting in this luxurious office that was nicer than the tiny 2-bedroom home we'd closed on a month ago in Burbank. Dad demanded we purchase the place after I secured a job in the city at a fabulous art gallery. Then the heart attack hit, and now here we sat, in the office of a guy that I screwed like some crazy woman and thought I'd never see again. Don't get me wrong, though. I never regretted a second of it. In fact, a tiny part of me wished I'd meet him in some crazy way again. I just didn't think it would take the Grim Reapers showing up to find the man I couldn't get off my mind since leaving that hotel in Frisco. Thanks. Push them out to 4 o'clock on Thursday, then. I heard his voice before he knocked twice and opened the door to his office. You're still set for your transplant tomorrow, a female's voice said firmly. I glanced over at the long white sleeve that covered his beautiful hand as it rested on the door. He stepped back out of the office, and I heard his voice lower. Is there some reason you're telling me this as I'm about to meet with a new patient? Can this not wait? I just wanted you to be aware. Her voice sounded bitchy in response. Thank you, he said curtly, then entered the room. Good afternoon, Mr. Taylor, he said to Dad before he eyed me with those dark blue eyes, and my heart raced in response to his serious expression. I see you brought your daughter. He leaned up against his desk casually. Has she threatened to take any pain meds from you lately? I watched the handsome man smirk at my dad, his dark green shirt and gray tie tucked into his sharply pressed slacks with his white overcoat, or doctor's smock, revealing his name and title that kept any thoughts of our previous wild night together far from my mind. In this environment, he was definitely not Mitch from the wedding. Mitch from my dreams nearly every night since I left him, or Mitch, the man I continued to fantasize about every day since he turned my world upside down mentally and physically. Dad gripped my shoulder, and I popped up on the couch, finding myself staring intently at the slate floor that his massive desk sat in the center of. I looked over at Dad's confused expression and smiled. Did I miss something? I tried to recover. Sorry, long week, I said, looking to see that Dr. Mitchell had seated himself in his chair behind the massive desk. He cocked his head to the side, his eyes darker than ever. An expression seemed like he was disgusted that my head wasn't in the game. Dad laughed. Gotta love my Ashley. She's one to wander off whenever she sees beauty and art. Dad pointed to the stunning skyline of Los Angeles through the $1 million view windows behind the doctor's desk. Anything to take your mind off the subject of your old man's neglected heart. Dr. Mitchell smiled at me for the first time since seeing him again. I believe any view of a skyline can keep one's mind healthy and sober, he said, glancing back at the view that mirrored the one on the rooftop where we'd chatted in San Francisco, and then back to the file he had on Dad. Yeah, I sighed. So what's going on with my dad? Why did you take him on as a patient when you weren't accepting new ones? Is it that bad? Ash. Dad patted my leg. Don't put me in the grave just yet. I rolled my eyes at Dad. His sense of humor was weird, but that's what I loved about him. I need both of you to have an open mind, as I know there will be many questions. He looked between Dad and me. Your enlarged heart suffered 70% death due to the heart attack. I've also noticed the defect that you and I discussed is one you've had since birth. All of these can easily be corrected with surgery. What kind of surgery are we talking about, Dr. Mitchell? My dad asked in the voice he always spoke to my mom's doctors in when they had that please have an open mind look on their faces. His eyes shifted between my dad and me. Shit, this isn't looking good. I felt tears well up in my eyes. Not again. I let the words slip out. I looked at Dad and held his hand. "I'm so sorry. I said I wouldn't pull this on you, but I can't help it." "Do either of you want to know why I am asking for you to keep an open mind?" Dr. Mitchell's voice was slightly humored, but calculated in its delivery. I could tell he'd done this talk numerous times, and most likely dealt with the same reaction I was having. "Go on," I said stiffly, folding my arms and nervously bouncing my crossed leg. "Unfortunately, Mr. Taylor, your heart is not likely to last another year, and so I would like to present you with a life-saving alternative." Oh my God, I thought, and swallowed the spontaneous cry that almost escaped my lips, pressing down every emotion I had so I wouldn't throw up. "Very well then," Dad said. "What's the plan? Your blood type is very common, and a transplant—" "Absolutely not." For the first time since falling in love with Dr. Mitchell's humor, wisdom, and wit, my dad snapped harshly at the man. "I won't take the heart of a grieving family's loved one." I looked at Dr. Mitchell's calm expression as he nodded. "You'd be surprised at how many people share your sentiments," he responded. "However, after having done numerous transplants, I can assure you that we have an amazing program. I've witnessed families of organ donors who have met the recipients. Such thing is not required, of course, but it can be quite healing for the family of the departed. Some feel that it's a way of keeping their loved one alive." He rubbed his chin, and I could see his eyes must have been revisiting one of these situations he'd witnessed. "I won't do it," Dad said, his voice shaking. "Are there any other alternatives?" I asked numbly. Dr. Mitchell seemed defeated in that instant, where I thought he'd press Dad harder. Then his eyes grew fierce and his cheeks flushed red as he sighed. "I can arrange for a ventricular assist device, otherwise known as a VAD," he said mechanically. "This will be inconvenient, but you would have needed it while awaiting a new heart anyway. The implant surgery must be arranged immediately, and it will help the 30% functioning part of your heart to continue to do its job. Please allow me to make it clear that this machine is an assist to the heart, and it may not last longer than 2 or 3 years. A new heart would rid you of the defect you were born with, however, and I would be able to correct a lot of the issues your body has dealt with since birth if you choose to do that." "I just can't." Dad started tearing up, and that's when I grew more serious. "When will he go in for his other surgery?" I asked, not remembering the doctor's jargon he was using. "I already opened my schedule up for the VAD implant a week from today at 6 a.m, he said, eyes pleading with mine. "I understand this is a lot for both of you. I can see where you both have suffered a lot over the last few years, but I must insist that both of you consider it. Allow me to help you, Mr. Taylor." Dad tried to stand, Dr. Mitchell and I rushing to help him. "Damn it," he said in frustration. "I will set the appointment for the implant," he grumbled through his tears. "The other isn't going to happen." I looked at Dr. Mitchell's saddened expression, feeling torn myself. "Ashley," he said, my name rolling off his tongue like honey. "Do you work, or are you available to remain at home to care for your dad after this surgery?" "I work," I said meekly, "but I'll—" "There is no need to call out of work." Dr. Mitchell practically read my thoughts. "I'll be sending an in-home healthcare nurse. The hospital provides nurses to be there as long as needed for patients in your father's condition." "Thank you for that," I said. "Lisa will see both of you out, and I'll be calling to discuss issues further should they arise," he said, knowing my dad was pretty much walking out on him. "Yes, Lisa's been the one checking in with him, and she helped us when we got here," I said about his stupidly hot redhead nurse. The doctor left us to load Dad in the transport van with what seemed to be a pissed-off expression, and I couldn't get any of it out of my mind. By the time we were home and settled, the nurse arrived, and we spent at least 3 hours going over Dad's new lifestyle plans together. She was a Mexican lady named Carmen, and for the first time since Mom was gone, Dad was flirting and enjoying the company of a woman his age who had an awesome personality. Nurse Carmen even took me up on my offer to sleep in my room since I'd pretty much gotten used to sleeping on the couch after Mom got sick and Dad pulled his shit on me. I was always scared to be sound asleep in my room should anything happen. Dad and I sat alone in the living room after Carmen left to pick up his prescriptions. It was the night before his implant surgery, and I was nervous as hell. I wanted him to get the damn heart transplant, but he wouldn't have it. The stubborn man was convinced he was too old to take a donor heart from someone else who was younger and needed it more than he did. Carmen backed me up on the fact that being 65 wasn't a death sentence. He was young. He wasn't an old man who should let his life go because he felt he was too old to receive a transplant. The computer seemed to be my best friend these days since work letting me off until Dad was settled and progressing well. In-home nurse or not, I wasn't leaving Dad. Not at least until this implant to assist his dying heart was done. "You're being selfish, Dad," I finally said, pissed off that he could be on a donor list, but he was wasting time by sitting around and not having this discussion again. "Now you sound like your mother." He smiled at me from his comfy chair, oxygen machine and all. "Don't even go there to get out of this," I said, my legs curled under me on the sofa. "Why would you be okay to put me through all of this shit again?" "Ashley," he said. Even with a weak heart, on oxygen, and hardly mobile, he still acted like stern old Dad. "We are not having this discussion." "Fine." I looked away from him. I didn't want to work up his blood pressure. Surgery was tomorrow, and the last thing I was going to do was fight with him when this could be the last time we spoke. Carmen walked in at that point. She was a perfect shade of sexy, and I prayed to God that I looked as vibrant and sassy as the woman when I hit my 60s. She was a great confidant, too, not just for Dad, but for me also. She kept both of us looking at the brighter side of all of this, and I was grateful for everything she was doing to help us. "We need to try and get some sleep," I said. "We only get a couple of hours before you're in the hospital being prepped for surgery tomorrow morning." Carmen backed me, and it wasn't long after that I laid on the couch, wide-eyed and unable to sleep. I knew it would go down this way, too. Shit, I'd be a wreck tomorrow. No big deal, though. My dad was only going into surgery with the hottest man alive. I sat in the waiting room with another family who sat a corner, most likely waiting for those doors to open and someone walk through them to possibly change their lives forever with whatever came out of the messenger's mouth. "Another coffee?" Carmen asked after the doors opened, startling all of us who were waiting for the words we all seemed to be scared to hear. "If this girl has another coffee, she'll probably ruin the floors after pacing them," my Uncle Ken said with a laugh. He and Aunt Carrie were the best, but since they were in their late 70s, it was hard to relate to most of their conversations. Everything was political with the two, and it was severely exhausting. Dad loved it, though. I think he just loved arguing with them over the news. Fuck, I can't think. I rubbed my forehead and moved around the large waiting area of the surgical floor. "Can't we get some kind of news?" I asked, wondering what the hell could be happening in Dr. Perfection's operating room. Carmen looked at her watch. "It's only been 4 hours, mija. Dr. Mitchell said this implant could take up to 12 hours, given the condition of your dad's heart." I tightened my lips. Dr. Mitchell may have had a flawless record, but that was my dad in there under his knife. My dad who was going against his solid advice of getting on the donor list. Carmen's phone rang after I sat, crossed my legs, and let the nervous leg bouncing commence. "Carm?" I could have sworn I heard Dr. Mitchell's voice on the other end of her phone, since the volume was turned up way too high. "How are we doing out there?" "Is that Dr. Mitchell?" I asked. She held up a finger, smiled, and nodded at me. "We have one nervous lady out here," she answered in her enthusiastic voice. "Understandable," he said. "Can you hand her your phone, please?" She handed me the phone while I stared in disbelief at what the fuck was going on. "Yes," I said softly. "Ashley," he said, while I heard machines beeping, people speaking to each other, surgical talk. "I wanted to update you and let you know your dad is fine. It's just taking us a bit longer due to some unforeseen issues that were easily repaired." "Are you in the middle of surgery?" I asked in shock. "Yes," he answered. "You're on speakerphone." "Thanks for the warning. I was about to cuss you out for talking on the phone while my dad's life was hanging in the balance." He chuckled, and strangely enough, my heart reacted to the calmness in his voice and the staff in the background that seemed to act like this is how these sorts of things went with Dr. Mitchell. "Dr. Chi, please," I heard him say, ignoring me. Obviously, the guy is in the middle of surgery. "Thank you, Doc," he said. "Still there, Ashley?" "Yes." "All right. Well, we are progressing extremely well. I wanted to ensure you were updated after the current time in surgery was brought to my attention," he said. "I believe we'll be in here for another hour or 90 minutes. "Thanks for the update. Please just keep him safe." "My every intention, Miss Taylor," he said. "Can you please hand the phone back to Carmen?" I handed her the phone and shrugged at the family in the corner who was staring at us oddly as Carmen ended the call. I couldn't blame them. Getting a call from a doctor performing surgery wasn't something I'd ever thought I'd experience. The doors opened, bringing my attention to the doctor walking through them. Naturally, my heart would be pounding in my chest, wondering if this doctor was here to deliver news to them or me. "The doctor is still in surgery, but she sent me out to inform you all that everything looks great," the man said. "It'll be close to an hour before we'll be taking your son to recovery." "Thank you, nurse," they responded. I looked over at Carmen, who just hung up with the doctor. "Care to inform me what the hell our doctor was doing calling us while theirs sent a nurse?" She patted my leg and leaned over to me. "The difference," she lowered her voice, "is your surgeon is Dr. Mitchell." She leaned back and smiled, smoothing her shiny black hair over her shoulder. "He is known for calling out to the waiting room, or if a nurse is with his patient's family, he calls the nurse." "He hasn't killed anyone by doing that? I mean, there is a reason phones are the cause of distraction in most accidents." I snapped, nervous and bewildered. No, she shook her head. "I've heard many stories about his OR and staff." She sat back in her chair. "The man is a genius with his skill, and he has a very level head. He is extremely focused while performing the surgeries. It's pretty much second nature to him." "I've never heard of that." "Even with all the Googling you've done on Jacob?" She arched her flirty brow at me. "Well, he's known for not only treating his patients like family, but also for making sure the ones in the waiting room aren't distraught." "He's a damn fine doctor," a man my dad's age said from across the waiting room. "I hear they're doing some interview with him this week, or next." Carmen nodded. "They sure are. He deserves the recognition. But knowing Dr. Mitchell, he probably hates the circus around it." She folded her arms, totally chill, and had me intrigued with the man I'd ended up fucking all night in a hotel room. There was no telling what the good doctor thought of me. He didn't act like our night together, where I knew him as Mitch, was as big of a deal as I thought it was. How in the hell was I so spun out on someone who seemed completely different than the man fixing my father's heart? There was Mitch, the man who knew his way around my body like he'd created it himself. And then there was Dr. Jacob Mitchell, the man who blew everyone's fucking mind as a renowned surgeon. Both were an equal turn-on. And now the pressing question was this: how fucking old was this guy? He'd looked my age, maybe a little older when I met him, but to be a chief surgeon and highly skilled one, with the media on his ass? If I listened to the side of my head that loved fantasy novels, then he was an actual angel hidden in a human's body, and I had the privilege of meeting both sides of this angel who held my dad's life in his hands. Call it instincts. His steady and humored voice during his in-surgery call, or just my total fascination with him, but I knew Dad was in good hands. 2 hours later, the double doors automatically opened to reveal utter hotness in the dark blue scrubs and hat that concealed his probably messed to perfection hair. His eyes popped against the navy color he wore, and the light beard growth on his face made his razor-sharp jawline enticing. "Miss Taylor," he announced, with 3 others trailing him. I held back my gawking as I stood. I wasn't going to drool over this man who made scrubs look sexy. I needed answers. "Yes," I said on an inhale. "Your dad is in recovery. He did extremely well," he smirked, "though his heart is as stubborn as he seems to be." "Yes," I answered. "Thank God." I wanted to collapse into his arms and thank this man for saving my dad. "You'll be admitted to his room once he's moved into the CCU. Other than that, I'll see him in the morning during my rounds." Carmen called after Dr. Mitchell, and I stood there, watching her walk alongside the tall man as the doors slowly closed to the waiting room after he left. I naturally envied the 2 blonde intern girls who came into the waiting room with him, and the young man seemed to look at Dr. Mitchell as if he were a god to be worshipped. They all carried looks of pride on their faces, and I could understand why. Working for a doctor like him must have been a dream come true in the medical field. I slumped down into the waiting room chair and closed my eyes for what seemed to be the first time in the last 24 hours. Finally relieved this was over. And now Dad had a machine helping his heart do its job. Chapter 8. Ash. I hadn't seen Dr. Mitchell since the afternoon of Dad's surgery, but I sincerely wanted to thank this man. The one night of passion I'd shared with him felt entirely in the past now. I was fortunate to have screwed the sexy doctor, but after seeing his non-doctor side, I could probably bet I wasn't the only chick he'd ever fucked without a relationship before. How this entire hospital seemed to be staffed with gorgeous interns and nurses, men and women, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's the one thing the girls who worked here and I had in common. Screwing Dr. D. I sipped on my coffee, thinking about the whirlwind of a week this had been. Thank God for Carmen, because we learned most patients would be in the hospital up to 4 days before surgery to prepare for everything. All of the x-rays, heart screening technology, all of it was able to be done with Dad comfortably being transported to the hospital and then sent home. I was still in shock when Dr. Mitchell allowed Dad the comfort of home instead of just slapping his stubborn butt in the hospital. All in all, it was done. And now Dad had his handy-dandy VAT implant. And Nurse Carmen was paving the way to make it all too easy for him to go home after the doctor cleared him in 3 weeks instead of going to a rehab center. Her sass had better be up for this because Dad would fight her, and I would be calling in to have him forced into the rehab center if he tried to slack off after rejecting the idea of a donor's heart. It was the 5th day after Dad's surgery, and he had finally passed the test to be pulled off the ventilator. They pulled him off after Dr. Mitchell had come to do his rounds last night and saw Dad's lungs progressing well. I never seemed to be able to connect with the doctor since the surgery, though. If I weren't grabbing something from the cafeteria, I dozed off in the comfortable chair at Dad's bedside every time he came in. I'd already gone home today, showered and changed, and was back around 6:30 in the morning with the coffee I'd gotten for Carmen and me. One of the noises coming from the nurses' station alerted me to more people on the floor, and Carmen left to go join in on whatever in the hell was happening outside of Dad's room. It was Friday morning, and this was the only loud noise of any party I was going to get. "Ash." Dad's hoarse voice called my name. I looked over at the man who'd been in and out of sleep since they'd pulled him off the breathing machine. "Well, good morning, handsome," I said. "You okay?" "Throat's killing me, but you look like death." He lazily smiled. "Thanks for the compliment." I laughed, my hair pulled into a tight bun and still wet from letting it air dry. "Well, I guess I survived." You're not talking to a ghost, I laughed, knowing Dad was talking to me heavily under the influence of his pain medication. Dad, rest, I said, waiting for the nurses to come in and fill me in on whatever the doctor was planning with Dad. Well, Dad said, ignoring me as the curtain opened. I guess I got the implant. You got it, all right. I went to look away, but then my dad laughed softly and I looked at him, wondering if the meds were having some weird effect on him that I should be concerned about. Imagine that, Ash, he said as the room filled with hospital staff. I got implant surgery before you. My eyes widened. Dad, I said with a laugh. Good Lord, go back to sleep. You're stoned. That was a good one, Ash, Carmen said. I turned and smiled at her. He's out of his mind, and I don't need you co-signing on his stoned, crazy commentary about implants. That's when the other three in the room laughed. Two of them went straight to Dad's monitors and IVs, and the third was Dr. Mitchell. I smirked at his humored expression and ignored the handsome man standing in his suit with the white smock that pulled the whole sexy doctor ensemble together. Well, I see you're back with us and enjoying the good stuff, Dr. Mitchell teased, looking at Dad's monitors and then glancing back down at him. I feel incredible, Dad responded. That's fantastic. I see that all is working well, but the road to recovery will make you and Carmen best friends by the time this is over. She's a beauty, Doc, Dad said. Dr. Mitchell grinned. That she is. All right, he's loaded. I finally cut in. Are there any new updates we should be aware of before Dad and you get going down a road that will most likely end up talking about implants and my lack of them? Dr. Mitchell's gaze was unreadable, but it seemed like my entire body picked up on what it meant, and in a good way. Jesus Christ, he can't stare at me like that. That's the Mitch, all night in the room look. Very well. His face recovered from that devilish grin I saw more than once that night. Your father will be transported down to our heart recovery floor this afternoon. His biventricular assist is performing well, and his body is accepting it just as I'd like. Have the nurses informed you on what to expect over the next 3 to 4 weeks of him being on our heart recovery floor? Yes, I answered as professionally as he was now speaking. And you will still be checking on him? Yes, he's under my care until we turn him over to my middleman. He winked at Carmen. And my snitch of a nurse. He arched an eyebrow at Dad's embarrassing whistle at the mention of Carmen's name. She will continue to work with him while he recovers and rehabilitates at home. Any other questions? I'm sure Carmen will help us out with anything I'm forgetting, I said, mortified by Dad's behavior. He won't remember any of this, Dr. Mitchell said, my head turning to peer up at him. Try not to give him too hard of a time when the heavy medication wears off. Thank you again for everything, Dr. Mitchell, I said in all sincerity. Thank you for trusting my staff and me with your father, he said, and then our eyes locked in a way that sent a shiver down my spine. It had to have been his looks that were playing these games with my mind and body, because it couldn't have been him flirting with me. My wet hair bun, hoodie, and leggings made me look like a bum who'd taken up residence at St. John's. Girl, Clay said as he rubbed my back in Dad's luxurious suite of a heart recovery room. You need to get out of here and get some vitamin D. I looked over at my best guy and smiled as he messed with one of his long braids. The dude was stacked with muscle, mocha skin that made me drool, and a smile that beamed brighter than the sun. He was sharply dressed in his suit from showing some multi-million-dollar home today, and, dare I say it, he probably made the gorgeous doctor envious of him. You know I'm not leaving him. I looked over at Dad, who was in a giddy conversation with Carmen as they returned from his short walk out of the room. What I know is that you look like hell, he said. Then he leaned in. Although it doesn't seem to bother Dr. Sexy whenever he comes in. Please stop bringing that up. I looked over at Dad from where Clay and I sat on the couch. My dad cannot find out about it. Clay rolled his eyes. I'm going to tell him if you don't take a day off and get out of here. Fine, I lied to shut him up, knowing he most likely wouldn't be back with 3 open houses going on tomorrow. I'll get out of here tomorrow. I covered a yawn. It sounds like I'm missing out on a party in here. Dr. Mitchell's smooth and doctorish voice alerted his entrance. After 2 weeks in here, the doctor and I were on a communicate about Dad's condition-only basis. Nothing more and nothing less. The worst part was that he was one of the best doctors in the world. Gorgeous or not, it was apparent he cared a lot about his patients,